My boyfriend left me out of a family trip that he was going on to Japan, as he literally told his family that he doesn't want me to go, while also claiming that I would ruin the trip because apparently I'm a pain to go on vacation with. And now, after all of it's said and done, I feel so heartbroken that honestly it's making me question everything. And at this point, I honestly don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I've been with my boyfriend for 3 years, and this situation has been weighing heavily on me for the past 6 months. Back in August, my boyfriend's family started planning a trip to Japan. At first, I thought it was just a family trip, but then weeks later, I found out that one of his siblings' girlfriends was invited. It felt strange that only one girlfriend was included, but I tried to let it go since it seemed like a family holiday. 2 months later, I saw a text message from his mom. It mentioned me, and his mom said, "Are you sure she definitely is not coming to Japan?" And he responded by saying, "No, definitely not." And you know what? I had no idea she had even asked me about joining. Well, I was hurt and I confronted him about it, and his reaction was to be defensive. He said things like, "You're a pain to be around on the holidays. I don't want you there because you'd ruin the trip. And yeah, I told my family I didn't want you there." He also said both the other girlfriends were going, but I was the only one left out, and that he was glad about it. This then led to me completely breaking down, and I went nonverbal for hours, but he dismissed my feelings, calling me immature for being upset. Now, my reasons for it being wrong was that he lied to me, clearly lied to his family about asking me, and being completely isolated from his family and other girlfriends. Now, for context, the girlfriends have been in the family for 10 plus years, and they all live in the same area and grew up there. Well, I eventually forgave him, even though I still felt terrible about it. But over the last 6 months, we've argued about it repeatedly. I just wanted him to acknowledge how wrong it was and to genuinely express regret or remorse. But instead, I've only received what felt like empty apologies, saying how sorry he was, but with no action or responsibility. This weekend, he went on the trip, and I've been struggling to control my emotions. The idea of him and his family and the girlfriends having dinner on holiday, making memories of a lifetime while not including me, honestly feels unbearable. I feel like I'll always be left out and that I'll have to hear about it for the rest of my life. When I brought it up again, he apologized and said that he had wished he had handled it all differently, but he said he can't change it now, and that he would say he wants me there but doesn't want to make me feel worse about not being there. But it doesn't feel like he regrets what happened or even wishes that I was there. I'm still haunted by the things he said back then, and I feel like I'm not valued in his life the same way I value him. I'm struggling with whether or not I'm overreacting. Am I wrong to still feel hurt about this situation? Should I just suck it up and get over it? Or is it reasonable to still be upset after all this time? I love him so much, and there's a lot of reasons I've pushed through these feelings because he is worth it, but I feel like he doesn't really care about my feelings and the effect this situation has had on me and my self-worth. What should I do? Okay, my God, what is going on right now? Why are you still with this guy? I don't normally say that, but seriously, this guy does not sound like a good boyfriend. He's clearly not in love with you. If anything, he's just stringing you along. He openly said, "You're a pain to be with on vacation. You're just gonna ruin it. I don't want you there." Like, what loving boyfriend in their right mind would say that to their girlfriend? Like, seriously, this guy sucks. If I was in your shoes, I would be immediately breaking up with him. Like, I know for a fact if my family was going on vacation, my girlfriend would be the first person I take on that trip, especially if I really care about her and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be so much fun for the two of us. If anything, he's treating you like an annoying best friend that he secretly hates instead of your girlfriend who he should be caring about. So truly, I am so sorry that you're dealing with this, and I'm so sorry you're dealing with an immature jerk like this who's claiming to be your boyfriend, because in my opinion, this guy is not that. He doesn't give a crap, he doesn't care about anything that you're doing, and worst of all, it doesn't sound like he has any regrets for not inviting you. It really seems like this is like some kind of half-hearted apology where he's saying it out of obligation instead of like actually meaning it. And in my opinion, you don't deserve that, and you definitely deserve a way better boyfriend than this guy, because from the sounds of it, it really does not seem like he likes you in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for continuing to post on Instagram after my boyfriend said it's starting to affect our relationship? Here's what happened. I'm a 26-year-old female, and I've been dating my 27-year-old boyfriend for close to a year. But lately, we've been having the same argument over my Instagram usage. It never used to be an issue, but recently he started saying it's affecting our relationship in ways that are bothering him more and more. I've always been into posting on Instagram, and it's just something that I enjoy. I like documenting little things like food when we go out, outfits I feel good in, or just moments I want to remember. It's not some influencer thing or anything like that, but I like having a creative outlet. He knew this from the start and never seemed to have a problem with it until recently. I haven't really changed my habits up until this point, but now he he's saying it feels like Instagram is becoming a third person in the relationship. He says it's getting to the point where he feels like he can't enjoy a meal or go out without it turning into a mini photo shoot. I'll ask him to take a couple of pictures, and sometimes I want to try a few angles or poses, and I guess I can understand how that might feel like a chore. He's told me it takes him out of the moment and makes him feel like he's just behind the camera while I focus on getting content. He's also mentioned feeling annoyed when I spend time editing or writing captions instead of being fully present, which I don't even do when we're out. Another thing that came up is when I post photos of myself in more revealing outfits. I don't do it often, but there has been the occasional post with a tight-fitted dress or something that I would wear in the summer. I felt confident and I liked how I looked. Well, he told me it makes him uncomfortable and that he feels weird about the kind of attention these posts might attract. I've reassured him that I don't reply to DMs or engage in that kind of stuff, but he still says it bothers him and it makes him feel insecure. He's now saying it's starting to affect how he feels day to day. He says it makes him feel more distant from me, like I care more about what I'm posting than being in the moment together. He's not asking me to delete my account or anything like that, but he's clearly frustrated and says if things keep going the way they are, it's going to push us apart. I've been trying to understand his side, and I've made some effort to cut back a bit when we're spending time together, but at the same time, I feel like I shouldn't have to stop doing something that I enjoy just because he's uncomfortable with it. I don't post anything wild, I ignore all the direct messages, and I don't think I'm doing anything disrespectful. I've told him that if it ever feels like too much, he could just tell me and we can figure it out. But now I feel like he's expecting me to completely change how I use social media just to try and make him feel better. So am I the jerk for continuing to post even though it's clearly bothering him? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, in my opinion, I think everybody sucks here because on one hand, your boyfriend absolutely should not be policing your Instagram, but also it seems like you're not willing to make any kind of compromise. It seems like you're willing to say, oh, he's wrong, he doesn't know what he's talking about, while also saying in the same breath, but I'm never gonna change. And it's like, wait a second, there's like no middle ground that you might be able to come to. Like maybe if you're going on a date together, you don't sit there and take a bunch of pictures or something like that, and instead spend time together as a couple. Like for me personally, that absolutely could be a good compromise. So in my opinion, I think there needs to be a little bit more wiggle room from both of you, because I seriously think you're both acting immature, and it doesn't seem like either of you are trying to see the other person's point of view in the slightest. An entitled jerk chooses to use his phone on speakerphone while also loudly shouting in it while I'm trying to use the bathroom. So I got some petty revenge that he truly will never forget. Here's what happened. Okay, so I was at Walmart and I was sitting in a stall tending to my business when the bathroom door opened and a man talking on his phone entered the bathroom. And this guy was talking really loudly. Like it was seriously as if he was yelling into his phone, and he had the phone on speakerphone with the volume jacked all the way up. Now normally I really just don't mind or even care about this kind of scenario, but as the minutes dragged by and the conversation showed no signs of slowing down, I started getting really annoyed. 5 minutes later, when I finished my natural duties and I got out of the stall, this guy was still yelling into his phone. So I said to myself, fine, you want to be loud and obnoxious in public? Well, game on. I washed my hands and like any other guy, I turned the hand dryer on. Now the hand dryers at this store are super loud, and the one I was using was placed in a spot where it emitted a shrill, high-pitched sound if the user held their hands close enough to the nozzle, and it echoed off the walls. So I made sure to take an extra long time drying my hands, guaranteeing that not a drop of water remained on my hands. Well, the guy had left his stall and exited the bathroom before I finished, holding the phone to his ear. And sure, it was incredibly petty, I know, but for me, it was also super satisfying. Oh man, I love this for so many reasons because seriously, I can't stand when people talk on speakerphone in public, let alone when they're yelling into their phone for everybody to hear. Like seriously, get some headphones or talk on the phone normally. There's no reason to drag everybody else into your stupid conversation. So good for you for getting some petty revenge because this guy sounded like he absolutely deserved it. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for breaking up with my girlfriend after she proved to be completely incompatible with me and my life goals? Here's what happened. I'm a 21-year-old male and I was in a relationship with my ex for almost 2 years. Recently, I broke up with her and her friends are saying that I'm the jerk for breaking her heart. For context, we met through a mutual friend back when I was 19 years old, and in our country, we have to attend college for 2 years and then university for undergrad and postgrad. And back then, I was in college. We lived in different cities around 6 hours apart, and I fell for her at first glance, and I expressed that pretty quickly too. We then started dating, with the initial 6 months being long distance. Then she moved to my city for better opportunities at university, and I was over the moon. Her parents were financially comfortable, but still she was having trouble making ends meet. So I started covering her rent, groceries, and other things. I tried to fulfill her every wish. Now her ex, with whom she was in a relationship relationship with for only 2 days was the main problem in our relationship. When she moved here, she invited him in our hangout without even informing me first. But at the time, we sorted that out back then. When university selections were rolling out, I got selected for the top university in our country, and she didn't get any. Her only option was to attend community college or attend a private university, which was quite expensive. But when she didn't get selected, she ended up breaking up with me. But then she came back blaming those words on her mental state. After a while, she said that she can't move on from her ex, and so she wants to leave me. And when she said this, it really broke me, which then led to me starting the pick me dance. And somehow I managed to convince her to be with me. Things were going great, but I have severe anxiety as well as ADHD and PTSD. And when she failed her last exam, she actually blocked me, which caused me to have a panic attack. And this was so bad that I had to go to the emergency room. When she got in contact with me, I told her I was in the hospital, and her reaction was to say, okay, well, a lot of people go to the ER. That's nothing big. And even still, she blamed everything on her emotions and mental state. After moving out, she was constantly saying that I need to marry her and get her into a private university. But I would respond by saying, well, I can get you into a community college or maybe a cheaper university. But she always said, well, if you're not capable enough to fund my education and my dream lifestyle, why would I be with such a worthless guy? If you want to marry me, you have to get me into the university that I say, and you have to cover all the expenses. So after that fiasco, I broke up with her. And now her friends are saying I broke her heart and her dreams. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I'm still incredibly confused. Oh my gosh, your ex-girlfriend sounds insane. And in my opinion, she should stay your ex-girlfriend. First of all, she does not sound loyal at all, because when her life was going sideways, she's like, okay, this is your fault and I'm leaving. While also basically giving you an ultimatum, essentially stating that you need to get her into the university that she wants to go to. And that, in my opinion, is just insane. Like seriously, that's some weird behavior. So it really begs the question, like, do you really want to be with someone like that? Because from the sounds of it, this does not sound like a sane person. It doesn't sound like someone who would ever love you long term like a wife should. And if anything, it sounds like someone who would dump you to the curb at the first sign of conflict. So honestly, who cares what her friends think? If her heart's broken and her dreams are shattered, and she's blaming that solely on you, then they were clearly not dreams to begin with. If anything, it was just her own delusional manipulation that clearly fell apart. So no, you're definitely not the jerk. This lady sounds crazy and you could do way better than her, because in my opinion, she is only going to drag you down. An entitled jerk that I play soccer with gets me banned from the organized events we have on a weekly basis, all because I scored on him twice in a game. So now I'm concocting my own petty revenge by literally organizing against them through an application that I'm developing, and I'm truly hoping that this hits them where it hurts. Here's what happened. So I usually play soccer in a weekly matchmaking style game organized by a local team at the nearest field. The format is simple. Anyone can join even if you don't know the other players. It's perfect for someone like me since I don't have many friends who are into soccer, and organizing a match on my own isn't really an option. That field is my favorite, and unfortunately there are no other decent ones nearby, as the other ones are just way too far away. During my last match, I scored 2 goals against a goalkeeper who apparently just didn't take it well. This same goalkeeper, who also happens to be a friend of the event organizer, reported me for allegedly saying something negative about the organizer, which is completely false. I didn't even interact with either of them during the match. Well, a few days later, the organizer called me and told me that I was banned from the event. Now, I tried to explain the situation, but he wasn't interested in hearing my side. I spoke to the field owner, someone I know really well, who respects me for my fair play, but he told me there was nothing he could do, as he isn't the one organizing the event. But now, here's where things might get interesting. For months, my co-founder and I have been developing an app for soccer fields. It allows players to join matchmaking games and play with friends more easily. I've already spoken with a field owner, and he's agreed to use our platform once it launches, which is along with other field managers. That means we'll have access to a wide base of users, including the kind of players who attend these kinds of matches. So, given that, I'll soon have a degree of control over how matchmaking happens, and I think this might be my way of getting some interesting revenge. Keep in mind, I have the full names and phone numbers of both the organizer and the goalkeeper. I considered banning them from the app, but that feels like it's just not enough. And so at this point, I'm considering my options, because this really could be the best revenge I could possibly come up with. Oh man, the fact that you have some kind of way of affecting their entire organization, in my opinion, is really funny, especially if this application takes off and people really use it. Like, you could easily start messing with them in a way that they have no control over, especially since they banned you for illegitimate reasons. Like, why should you get banned all because that guy has sour grapes because you scored on him? It's honestly unfair, and I don't blame you for being pissed off. And hopefully you get your revenge and some kind of way because these people absolutely deserve it. Would I be the jerk for excluding a family that has a badly behaved autistic child who is quite literally violent towards other neighborhood kids during the pool party? Because right now I'm honestly not sure what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I host a monthly pool party and barbecue for the neighborhood families in my area. I buy about $200 in steaks, hot dogs, and drinks, book the community party room, and send out invites and reminders. And this has become a great way for the adults to connect and catch up while all the kids swim and play. Unfortunately, one of the neighborhood boys doesn't behave appropriately. He splashes kids in the face when they ask him not to, pushes kids into the pool, calls them names, growls at kids when they win a game, doesn't follow the rules of games, and so much more. It's unpleasant for the other kids, and he makes the younger ones cry. His mom yells and screams to take him home, but she doesn't, and so he continues misbehaving. While I'm not well informed on autism, however, my stance is that the parents are responsible for ensuring their kids behave appropriately or removing them altogether. Instead, other parents have to get involved to yell at the kid to leave theirs alone or comfort their crying child. Well, after the last party, 2 of the kids asked me not to invite that boy again because apparently he ruined the day for them. And you know what? I agree with them. And I believe that as part of my responsibility of hosting is to create a guest list of people who add positivity to the event. Well, my husband disagrees because for starters, he thinks that I should first bring up the issues to the boy's parents and give them one more chance, while also saying that we can't exclude them since it is a community pool, not to mention that he's also just conflict avoidant and doesn't want to ruin relations with the neighbors. So seriously, what do you think? Would I be the jerk if I didn't want to bring these people to our pool party anymore? Because right now I don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk at all, and in my opinion, this should absolutely be something that is easily taken care of. They should be banned from any further interactions you have until those parents take care of the kids, especially around a pool. Like, you don't mess around with any kind of water and kids because seriously, someone's gonna drown. Like, that is literally what's gonna happen, and that is not okay. And just because he has autism doesn't mean he gets a free pass to be pushing kids into the pool. That needs to be corrected by the mom, and the fact that she's not taking care of it is absolutely a red flag. So yeah, if I was in your shoes, I would have banned that kid and his family yesterday and told him that he is straight up not welcome at any of our get-togethers because he's been violent towards other kids. Because that kind of behavior, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for canceling several plans after a work friend lied about being confused over which shift that she was covering? Here's what happened. Okay, so here's the problem. Both me and the friend are over 35 years old and we work for a major airline. It's also important to note that I'm a gay man. Sometimes when our schedules are published, we will agree to trade our trips around amongst friends. I messaged this friend and offered her a trip with a nice layover, and she agreed that she would take it. 2 days later, when trading became available, I sent her the trip as soon as the system opened and followed up via text messaging just to let her know to pick it up. Well, she attempts to pick it up and then makes it clear that she can't do it because she was awarded a trade with a different system that was for a trip that, conveniently enough, she had really wanted but wasn't able to outright hold. And sure, I know this is complex, but to further explain, this would have been something that she would have done consciously for it to even happen in the first place. So I point out that she could trade out of the trip and could then pick up the trip that she committed to from me, but she refuses. Then she adds that she really wants this trip and assumed that I had been referring to a different trip on my schedule. Now, I did push back and said that she'd agreed to take this trip and that in the future, if we agree on something like this, I would expect her to follow through. I look back at our text messages and there was no way that she could have been confused because she confirmed the trip date in our text conversation, and I so dislike being gaslit. Well, we were supposed to have dinner later that week, which I had intended on going through with and having a discussion with her about this, but I ended up being filled with anxiety that day and I had to cancel a few hours prior, which I did feel badly about just because I didn't want to waste her evening. During this time, I've also been experiencing some serious GI issues for months, which ended up with a visit to the emergency room a few weeks back. We had made plans to go on a trip, but given this health issue and her dishonesty, I made clear several weeks out that I would likely be unable to go, and today I confirm my unavailability. She's since been very distant, and when I mentioned being unable to go the first time, she said to me, well, I haven't even looked to see if I've got the days off, as if she doesn't even care that we had plans or that I had booked a hotel using my free night award to do so and asking nothing from her in return. I have been a good friend to this person, supporting them through a roommate situation that she was very upset about, answering long-winded text messages voicing her frustration, basically being her emotional support. I've even driven this person around to view different neighborhoods, going as far as looking into the place they moved into and assisting them into getting a little bit off of their rent. So with all that in consideration, am I the jerk for withdrawing given this kind of behavior on her end? Because seriously, I don't know what to do. Okay, in my opinion, I don't blame you for a second for taking a step back because because this kind of behavior is super obnoxious. Seriously, let's think about it for a second. It really seems like they're taking advantage of you, and that, in my opinion, is not fair. It sucks that they're literally just taking for granted all of your options for them, as well as all of your time and attention towards their needs, while also refusing to do the same towards you. Like, what is that about? That really sucks. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. She's pretending not to know what's going on as some kind of cover-up to get away with her poor behavior. So no, I don't think you're the jerk, and I think you're completely justified to distance yourself from this friend, because clearly they do not value your friendship in the same way that you do. And that is not fair for you in the slightest. An entitled customer refuses to pay me and my developer for rapidly creating, coding, and launching his website. And after he flat out said that he would never pay me my money, I decided that I was going to get some revenge. And as a result, I single-handedly took down his business, made him lose his home, and exposed him for the con man that he really is. And I've never felt more satisfied taking somebody down in my life. Here's what happened. So to start things out, this happened in the early 2000s. I used to be a freelance front-end developer as well as a search engine optimization guru. Back then, getting on the front page of Google was pretty simple. Link exchanging was pretty risky. I never did that, but I did have a single website that had some serious page rank clout due to it being linked as a trusted source directly from one of the top and most trusted websites in the world. I would use this website for the best clients to get their page rank and search engine position leapfrogging over basically everybody else, allowing them to be higher up in ranking than older and more trusted websites. Now, one day I was approached by somebody named Bob. Bob is not his real name. He sold traveling packages, and he needed to revamp his basic existing website with a complex website built with pretty tricky back-end coding. Now, I could do the front end, but I had to hire a back-end developer to build the functionality. Bob had a major launch in a month's time, and it had to be ready. I usually ask for a 25% deposit up front, but Bob said no. He was stung by the last developer and wasn't going to lose any more money. Now, from the moment I met Bob, my gut was telling me this was going to end badly. The problem was I needed the money, and it was worth quite a bit of money for me and the developer. So I skipped the deposit on the promise that he would pay me in full before it went on his server. And to that, Bob agreed. For an entire month, we worked day and sometimes all night to get this done in his time frame. With 1 day to spare, we had done it. And I'd never been so proud of what we achieved. I was honestly excited to show Bob. The next day, I sent the link to my test server, and he called me up to discuss it. Bob said everything looked good, but he was worried that his server's PHP version might be too old to run it. I assured him it would, but he was too scared that it wouldn't, and that we would just scrub our hands of it. We went backwards and forwards, but he was insistent that the site had to be uploaded and tested on his server before he parts with any kind of money. Now, I chatted with my developer, and he didn't like it either, but we agreed that we would upload our work onto his server. And honestly, this was a massive mistake, as Bob stabbed us directly in the back, doing something that I honestly never expected. So Bob gave me the FTP details and the server login, and I uploaded the site. I told him it was live, and then suddenly there was nothing. I sent several emails and then phone calls. The emails went unanswered and the phone went to voicemail. Sensing a major problem, I rushed to my computer. I fired up my FTP program to delete our work on his server, but our access was completely denied. He had locked us out, and the following day, he went live with our work. For several days, I tried phoning him until one morning he actually answered the phone. He said to me, "Listen, I'm not ever gonna pay you, and there's nothing you can do about it." And then he just hung up the phone. Honestly, rage was a really good word to describe my feelings. I was shaking while I still held the phone in my hand. For the next hour, my range of explicitives were growing in complexity. As I sat there figuring out what to do, it hit me. Revenge will indeed be mine. I decided to register a new domain name, which was Bob's travel domain plus the word sucks at the end of it. So, for example, if Bob's website was called bobstravel.com, I decided to purchase bobstravelsucks.com. I uploaded our work, basically an exact mirror of his live website, straight onto my new domain. I used my all-powerful mega page rank domain to link it to my new sucks domain. Within 1 month, my website jumped above his website in Google for literally every conceivable search phrase that you would use for the packages that he sold. No matter what you typed in, my site was the first result, and his was always below mine. During that month, I created a second website, which was Bob's full name with sucks at the end of it. On this website, I posted what happened, screenshots of his emails and warning everyone what a con man he was. Bob Bob had a somewhat unusual first and last name. And again, within a month, my website was above his own personal website. And then fast forward and I completely forgot about it. But not even 4 months later, I get a cease and desist email from a solicitor's firm. A quick Google search showed that the solicitor's firm was made up and didn't even exist. So I replied back by saying, I'm not ever going to take them down and there's nothing you can ever do about it. Now, every now and then, I would get emails from people he had conned by taking their money for a travel package, but never booking their package. I would put those names on my websites, making sure his full name and company name were spread across each negative review. A few months pass by, and I get an anonymous email linking to a new domain with a website that has my full name and the word sucks at the end of it. I'm told to remove my 2 websites, and then he will remove this new one. And once again, I get a quick search going, and what do you know? It isn't even on Google. No one could even find it. I reply back for a second time with his comment to me. As each month passes by, I'm getting more and more people emailing me saying that they've been ripped off, and so I just keep adding them to my website. As it would turn out, the travel agency world is very well regulated, and they started investigating into Bob's business, using my website as their main tool. I get a call from Bob, and Bob is not a happy Bob. In fact, Bob is more of a desperate Bob. Looking at this text now, I know you can almost hear the despair and resentment in Bob's voice. Bob pleads and literally begs me to pull the sites down. Not only is he being investigated by the Travel Agency Association, but he had some very important friends that didn't appreciate the bad press that he was causing in their circles. He offers to pay me the money that he owed. Nothing more, just what he owed. And for a third time, and with a massive smile on my face, I said his favorite phrase right back at him. Listen, I'm not ever going to take them down, and there's nothing you can do about it. Fast forward a few months later, and I discover his travel company has been removed from all travel associations. No matter what you typed into Google, my website outranked his, and all the bad reviews on my site were the first thing his potential customers would see. I crippled his business so badly, it went bust. During the collapse, one of his ex-employees contacted me and told me how hard he had worked to get my website off the first page. He had registered dozens and dozens of other domains in hopes that they would somehow jump ahead. But little did he know that only the top domain websites in the world could jump it. Now, apparently, Bob's property was tied into the loans on the failing business, and he lost his house too. It took me just about a year to turn his business from a cash cow into a dead cow. Now, many of you might be saying that I should have taken the money and not pulled the sites down, but at that point, it wasn't about the money. He seriously thought he could buy his way out of it after pretending to be a solicitor and then trying the same thing on me. Him knowing I didn't care about the money anymore must have driven him crazy, because money was all he ever cared about. He then knew that he could do nothing to stop his business from going down the drain, and all he could ever do was watch it all fall apart right around him. And I've never been more satisfied to take down somebody in my life. Wow, what an awesome story. That Bob guy is a complete jerk. He seriously said, I'm not ever gonna pay you and there's nothing you can do about it. Like, buddy, what is wrong with you? You can't just do that to somebody and expect to get away with it. Like, first and foremost, I'm sure that was a really hard job. You and the backend developer you hired worked incredibly hard to get this server up and running for this guy. And then he just turns around and stabs you and the developer in the back. Like, seriously, that is so messed up. I know if I was in your shoes, I would have gone to the police or gone to some kind of small claims court just to make sure this guy is punished for stealing from you. But it honestly seems like what you did instead was a huge service to humanity as a whole. Like, this guy was lying. He was somebody who was not doing what he was advertising, and he was basically completely stealing people's money. So honestly, good for you for getting back at this guy, because when you have sketchy business practices, then you absolutely deserve to lose it all. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today, I messed up by breaking a car elevator and essentially blocking all of my boss's cars underground. And now I'm really worried that I'm about to get fired. Here's what happened. So to start things out, I want to give some context. I work in a mid-sized company. I have a contract for 4 months, which will end at the end of this month. I work at the general department, so basically I'm a handyman. My manager wants to keep me with a permanent position, and I told him that I would be ready to join if my salary goes up. And it wouldn't even have to be some scandalous sum of money, just what I think is a livable wage. Now, to access the building, everyone comes by subway, except the bosses that all use their cars. When you come in by car, you have to take a car elevator and park in one of the 2 underground parking lots. Now, a water pipe broke down to the 2nd level and was completely leaking, so I called a plumber to make the repair. He comes to our office in a car and told me that he will have to drain the pipe from his car. So I say, well, that's no problem. We can just use the car elevator. Now, for additional context, my boss rides in those absolute monster of a car. They're super wide and they're super heavy. So I didn't think much of it, and I guide the plumber's car to the elevator. He goes in and there's no problem. And as soon as the door closes, he turns to me and says, wait, the car weighs more than 2 tons. And in front of us, there was a warning that said no more than 2 tons on the elevator. The elevator begins to go down and stops just as fast. And this is when I realized that I messed up. I called my manager to say that I'm stuck. I used the emergency button of the elevator and I talked to the guy, and they say that we will send someone soon. 1 hour later, somebody came by, and 2 hours later, we managed to very slowly come to the 2nd level where we just started out at. We make our way out of the elevator and understand a few things that are about to happen. For starters, all of our bosses, even the very high-ranking director, have their cars in the parking garage. The elevator doesn't work, and the still very heavy plumber car is all the way down here as well. Also, the guy who rescued me out of the elevator is not qualified to repair it. And overall, I just feel like I'm neck deep in garbage. My bosses will all end their day in about 30 minutes, and I'm probably going to be fired. And trust me, this director has a very impulsive personality, and he is just straight up awful, and has already fired people for smaller mistakes. So at this point, I honestly don't know what to do. If I was in your shoes, there's no way I would tell the truth. I am not about to own up to something that's gonna get me fired like that. First and foremost, you were just trying to fix a leaky pipe. That is not your fault, and you were just trying to do your job. But it sounds like if you tell them, hey, I broke the elevator and now you can't go home, they're just gonna straight up fire you. So yeah, what I'm about to say might seem a little sketchy, but personally, I would blame the elevator breaking on the leaking pipe just to make sure I don't get in trouble. Like, the guy that you work for sounds like an absolute basket case. Why on earth would you even want to put yourself in a position where he can have the opportunity to fire you? I just don't think that's a good idea, and honestly, I think it's time for you and the plumber to basically band together and be like, I don't know, we were going down to fix the pipe and then suddenly this happened. I wouldn't be like, yeah, it's because the car weighed too much. I don't know, that's just me. There's no way I'm gonna own up to that and get fired as a result. I know that probably comes off as really dishonest, but in today's world, I would rather keep my job and figure this out later than get fired on the spot for an honest, innocent mistake. But what would you do in this situation? Would you tell the truth and risk getting fired on the spot? Or would you just blame the elevator breaking on something else and try and retain your job no matter what? Leave a comment down below. We would love to see what you have to say. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for telling my housemate to get lost, all because he's trying to control what I can and can't do in my own home? Here's what happened. So to start things out, I'm a 22-year-old male, and back in February of this year, I lost my father and have inherited his house that I live in right now. I also lost my mother when I was 10 years old, so everything was default to go to me with the probate process. And for those who may not know what probate is, it's essentially a process you go through if a relative like a father or a mother or a grandparent passes away and they didn't have any kind of will. And this is basically the process of putting assets into people's name legally, and since I don't have any siblings, it all went to me. So this housemate in particular, we'll call him Ben for the sake of the story, Ben is not his real name, has lived with me for about 10 years since I was a kid basically, and he has been helping me with the probate process, which I very much appreciate. But in the past 2 to 3 months, he has been acting like he is in control of the house. We have also been remodeling a bunch of things. But the kicker is that he always gets upset with me and my friends when we do something that he doesn't like. And my friend lives here too and pays a fair amount of rent. One day, Ben and my friend, we'll call my friend Phil, had a disagreement of some kind. But Ben then told Phil that it was no wonder that his family doesn't want him, among other things. I had to break it up, and Ben threw a punch and hit Phil before I was able to separate them. And I really did see him throw the punch and land it. Afterwards, Phil left to go stay with his girlfriend for a week or two. And later that night, Ben and I got into a screaming match, and he was telling me that Phil is a piece of garbage and was calling him all these nasty things. I argued back that he had no right to punch Phil, but he lied to my face and said that he never touched Phil, even though Phil literally had a black eye for like a week. So I knew Ben was flat out lying to my face. But when I went to go and pick up Phil when he was ready to come back, I told Ben that I needed gas because I didn't have any, and I couldn't get any until I got paid. And I asked him for only $5 to make sure I had enough gas to get Phil and come back to my house. And honestly, I was annoyed annoyed that he was basically trying to tell me that I should kick Phil out. And mind you, it's important to note that Ben pays less than half of what Phil pays in rent. Ben told me, whatever, it's your house, do what you want. And me being already annoyed, I told him, yeah, it's my house and you're living in it. And this was about a month or two ago. Last night, things really came to a head when me and my other friend, I'll call him Jake, were downstairs drinking and playing video games and just having an all-around good time. But out of nowhere, Ben comes and tells us people are coming to move things at like 8 in the morning. And this was at midnight, and me and Jake were already a bit tipsy. And then another hour goes by and we're talking normally and not being loud because me and Jake were trying to be respectful. But even still, Ben comes downstairs and screams at the both of us saying, you guys need to shut up. I need to be awake at 6 o'clock in the morning. And also, just so everybody knows, he sleeps with his door open so he can hear every sound. And Jake and I weren't even being that loud. Eventually, the rest of the night went well and we all went to sleep. The morning rolls around and nobody is here moving anything. And Ben was still sitting on his bed on his phone. And I asked him, where are the people moving things? And he responded with, they're not coming today. And also, I was awake early enough to know that he didn't wake up and do what he said he had to do. So at that point, I knew he was lying to me and Jake just to get his stupid beauty sleep. But when he said that, I called him out. I straight up said to him, so you were lying just to get us to be quiet? And then he lied to my face again, saying that he had to get up early and do something. But I responded by saying, I was literally awake when you said you had to go do something. But I didn't hear you wake up and start moving until 9 o'clock in the morning. And there was absolutely no signs of anybody moving furniture. He started to just make excuses. So I told him, look, I appreciate that you're helping with the probate process, but you are on what I think to be a power trip. And you think that you can tell me what to do in my own house and act like you don't do anything wrong, while you have constantly lied to my face over and over these past few months. And I know for a fact that you were lying. So I want you to pack your things and find somewhere else to stay, because I am sick and tired of you telling me what to do and how to act in my own home. So pack your stuff and leave. The only time I want to see you is when we meet with a probate lawyer to put those assets into my name. Now, after I said that, he started yelling at me and talking all kinds of trash to me. And it came to a point where I got in his face and told him to get out of my house. He then went silent and started to pack up and left. But it honestly has me wondering, am I the jerk for telling him to get out of my house? Did I cross a line here? What should I do? First off, I want to say I'm so sorry that you lost your father. That really is not fair, and that has to be a really hard thing to be going through. So on that end, I'm really sorry you had to deal with that. Also, it really does sound like Ben was being very, very toxic. He was getting in arguments with Phil. He was lying to you and Jake about trying to get you to go to sleep and go to bed at a certain time, all because he had people coming in to move stuff around or whatever that was. And it really seems like Ben was not a good fit for the house. So I really think it was time for him to find some other place to live. Now, on the other end of this, I do think to a certain extent you and Jake were being rude to Ben. It's midnight, and we didn't really specify what day it was, but when you live with other roommates, you need to have some kind of quiet hours of some kind. Otherwise, you're going to run up into this. People have different sleep schedules. People have different responsibilities and things they want to do, and interrupting that is really not fair. And trust me, I totally get it. Ben lied to get you to shut up, but the underlying issue here is that you were being loud, and I really think that should have been handled in a more mature manner. Now, that doesn't justify Ben's behavior. I still think he was a massive jerk in this situation, and he really did need to go, but I think it could have been handled a lot differently in my opinion. So overall, with all things considered, I don't think you're the jerk for kicking him out of your house, but maybe in my opinion, it could have been handled just a little bit better. Am I the jerk for turning down one of my babysitting clients after she refused to pay me what she owed me? Here's what happened. So I babysit part-time and have been for the past 2 years. In that time, I've gotten some regular families who will have me babysit. One of my favorite clients is Sarah. She's 21 and has a 5-year-old daughter. Her mom and my mom are very close friends. She was one of my first clients, and because I was doing it as a favor to my mom, I gave her a reduced rate of about $10 an hour, while my other clients pay about $15 to $25 an hour, depending on how many kids they have and the kid's age. Recently, I decided to fire Sarah and stop babysitting her daughter. I babysit her daughter at least once a week, if not more. Over the summer, I was basically Sarah's daycare plan, where I agreed to take care of her daughter while she worked, all for about $200 a week. I would also babysit her a lot on the weekends so that Sarah could go party with her friends. After a few weeks of her coming home hours later with no text or warning, I told her that I would begin charging her double for every hour that she's late. So if I was supposed to babysit from 7 to 11, that'd be $40. But if I was supposed to babysit babysit during that same time frame and she came home at 3 o'clock in the morning, then she would need to pay me $120. She wouldn't pay me more than $40 unless her mom made her pay or her mom would pay it for her. She kept coming home late and began to stop paying me. I kept track of all of this, by the way, and I sent her a text telling her that unless she paid me what she owed me, I wouldn't babysit her daughter ever again. She finally did after 2 weeks of me not answering any request to babysit, but I decided to fire her anyways and tell her I won't be babysitting for her ever again because of her refusal to pay me. Also, without babysitting her daughter so much, I can babysit for other people who pay way more. My mom and her mom are really upset since she can't afford other childcare, and they keep telling me just to babysit for her, and they'll make sure that she pays me or that they pay me for her. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Honestly, if I'm working freelance in any kind of job, the second someone says I'm not going to pay you, that is the immediate straw that breaks my back. There's no way I will ever work with them ever again. There is an unspoken trust between freelancers and their clients. I do my job and you pay me. If you don't pay me, I will never help you with anything ever again. For me at least, that bridge is immediately burned, and I will never feel like I can trust them ever again. So for you to say I'm not going to work with you ever again and I'm not going to watch your kid, that in my opinion is completely reasonable. This lady's trying to make you watch your daughter far longer than you signed up for, and she is not properly compensating you for anything that you're doing. She is straight up taking advantage of you, and she probably will just do this again. So if I was in your shoes, I would absolutely stick to my boundary and say no, I'm not babysitting for you ever again, because you do not need that kind of garbage in your life, and honestly, you can find clients who are going to treat you a lot better than this lady. An entitled traffic blocker prevents people from getting to their jobs, so my friend decides to get some revenge by purposefully blocking his house with a shipping container, and I've never seen a better form of revenge in my life. Here's what happened. So for a bit of backstory, my friend runs his own private company. He even has a few people on payroll, and during the day of the incident that I'm going to talk about, he had an important meeting with a potential customer of theirs. He and several other companies got invited to see what they could offer the client, and that day one of them would be picked for the job at hand and thus gain a very lucrative contract. Unfortunately, my friend got stuck in traffic due to a group of climate activists and thus missed his meeting and his only chance on securing this contract worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. Needless to say, my friend was incredibly angry. Even though things were going pretty well for his company, there's still this issue of a recession going on. So yeah, within context, this is still a major setback for them. He tried to contact the police to see if he could somehow file a report or protest against these actions, but that turned out to be completely fruitless. That evening, he decided to watch the news to learn more about these idiots while having one too many beers. And that's when it happened. He recognized one of the roadblockers, a guy who lived in the same neighborhood 2 streets over. Now, at first, he figured he would go pay the man a visit to discuss the errors of his ways, but that got immediately shut down by his wife. But he was still seething and scheming. The next day, he made sure to print out the pictures that he had of the guy being involved with a road blocking and went to visit the guy's neighborhood. And sure enough, they confirmed that the guy on the picture was most definitely the neighbor. While he pretty much kept to himself, he was known to be pretty insufferable at times, especially when this guy, who we will call Mr. Entitled, was too sure about being right for his own good. But the neighbors all agreed that this blocking of traffic was beyond entitled. They should teach him a lesson that he shouldn't soon forget. And then his next door neighbor, now part of the group, suddenly said the following phrase: "What if we could block him for once?" And that's when it all clicked. Another neighbor soon had a brilliant idea. They absolutely could do that. But the only problem is that it wouldn't be free, and the next door neighbor would also be somewhat inconvenienced. But you know what? He didn't care about that at all. And thus the plan was set in motion to get revenge on this guy after he has caused so much havoc in blocking traffic. You see, this particular neighbor had a cousin working for a big construction company, so the group pulled some money together, and the neighbor contacted his cousin and explained what was going on, and they hired an industrial dumpster for 48 hours. After the cousin learned about the whole story, he talked things through with his boss, and lo and behold, this company also suffered from protests, so they were quite motivated to help out. The group of neighbors wouldn't be excessively charged, only the costs involved minus a very small fee due to tax reasons, and free priority delivery that very same afternoon. Sure enough, a huge deep loader made its way into the street, and that's only after contacting more neighbors, and nobody had any problem with moving their cars out of the way. The dumpster and the container was placed with only a meter or so to spare, precisely right in front of the neighbor's house, and right in front of the front door, which only opened towards the inside. In other words, it was sort of impossible to enter and leave the house on your own if you squeezed through a bit, but that was also basically it. The sidewalk was pretty much completely blocked off. They also blocked the front view of the next door neighbor, but he obviously could care less. And then the group went across the street. They grabbed several folding chairs, a table was set down, and plenty of beer and sodas were brought. The group had themselves a small party in anticipation of what would come next. Now, as expected, later that afternoon, the neighbor got home wearing a huge backpack, and he was not happy to see this container in front of his house. He was absolutely furious. When he spotted the group laughing at him, he was told that the company made a small mistake with the size of the container, but that he shouldn't worry. At least he could still get inside of his house. When the neighbors started protesting and started screaming the words, "You can't block me, that's illegal," the group then brought out pictures of him blocking traffic. He said, "Oh, that's different." But of course he would say that. So the guy called the police, and of course he would. But you know what the problem is if you contact the police almost every week to complain about non-issues, such as people parking their car fully legally in front of your house on a public street, which is something that this guy does all the time, it would seem like they would lose motivation to help you out or even believe you, because no police ended up showing up that day, despite him calling several times. Seething angry, the guy stormed inside. Well, he tried to, because he managed to get his backpack stuck between the house and the container, which obviously caused much cheering and laughter from the group. But Mr. Entitled did manage to get in after he took off his backpack. The next day, the next door neighbor got a visit from two police officers who had questions about the container. The neighbor briefly explained the bogus story about how the company shipped the wrong size container and how they would resolve the matter soon enough. He also told the officers that the neighbor across the street had handled the actual renting, so he and the other officers went to visit that neighbor. This neighbor told the officers that he had rented that container for 48 hours and showed them all of the paperwork. However, he kept the official documents together with the photo of the neighbor. So when the police officers had looked at the receipt, he then looked at the picture and suddenly he too recognized the entitled neighbor. The officer asked the question, "Wait a second, isn't that your neighbor?" To which they nodded yes. The officer then said, "So you guys blocked a traffic blocker." And after he said that, he bursted out laughing, only to then quickly correct himself. He then says, "Just so we're clear, can you guys guarantee that this thing will be gone by tomorrow?" He asked this with a stern voice, to which they said yes. The officer then said, "Okay, that will do for now, but don't make us come back." He then went back with his colleague to Mr. Entitled's house. They said the following, "Mr. Entitled, we know all that we need to know in this situation. We're going back to the station to file a report about this, and we'll also contact the company, which this container belongs to, and we'll tell them to remove this as soon as possible." The officer then told the entitled neighbor, "I'm sure we'll have this all cleared up by tomorrow." And then they left. Mr. Entitled did call the police a few more times that day, but was apparently told that his complaint was being processed. Mr. Entitled also didn't get any mail or packages that day because the moment the mailman walked up to his house, he did a look over at the door, but soon decided to walk past it. The next day, the construction company sent a deep loader again to pick up the dumpster, and that honestly was the end of the story. Well, sort of. The pickup didn't entirely go smoothly because one neighbor refused to move his car for 10 to 15 minutes. They went on to say, "When I park it again, this moron's gonna probably scold me as he usually does." And he said this to the driver with Mr. Entitled still present, who was red in the face with anger, but he really couldn't do anything about it. But eventually the container got removed. The two officers came back later that day to check and also told both neighbors that they got an official warning not to pull something like this again. So now Mr. Entitled was now officially Mr. Hypocrite in the neighborhood, and people started to openly mock him about his actions. The guy eventually moved several months later, all because people absolutely could not stand him. Wow, what an awesome way to get revenge. Seriously, this guy absolutely had it coming. If you're gonna block traffic just to try and make some kind of like environmentalist point or something like that, then you are an awful person. You are literally protesting the wrong people. These are just average civilians. These are people trying to get to and from work. There has got to be a more productive way of protesting and making your point than inconveniencing people that honestly just want to get to work and do their jobs. I can't stand when I see people like that online doing that, where they like glue their hands to the road and stuff like that. That is honestly so obnoxious, and seriously, people who do that are really not liked and absolutely obnoxious. Like, that is not helping me join your cause. If anything, it just makes you the enemy. So truly, to the original poster, this is an awesome form of revenge. And it's really cool to see that you gave this guy a taste of his own medicine. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My parents are constantly criticizing my life and my house that I just bought, and after dealing with their awful behavior for most of my life, I now find myself at a crossroad, and I seriously now don't know what to do. Okay, I want to first start off by saying that I'm kind of at a crossroads. I'm a 26-year-old female, and I've known my boyfriend, who's 28 years old, for almost 5 years now. Both me and him and our parents have all been really good friends. I bought a house across from my parents' home, and they're on holiday like 5 to 6 months a year, but when they're home, my mom is always home because she's on lifelong paid sick leave. Technically, I bought the house by myself, but I always say it's our house, just so you know. So when we bought our house in October last year, it immediately started with a whole lot of garbage because according to my parents, things didn't advance fast enough. They literally lost sleep sometimes because of the progress in my home. We had a lot to do. We stripped everything, put in new ceilings and walls and new electricity. We painted everything as well, etc. At first, I always felt bad when they commented on it, and honestly felt guilty towards them for not finishing my house, which is kind of messed up if you think about it. Then I lost my job in November of last year, which was horrible timing, and this totally crashed my mental health. Since I didn't have to put a mask on for work anymore, my mental health state came running down on me, and I was an absolute wreck. Many days I went from the bed to the couch and then right back to bed. I sought out help, and I found a great psychologist. She helped me realize that a big part of my mental state was due to me always breaking myself in two to live up to other people's expectations, mostly what my parents think. So I had to learn to set boundaries and speak up for myself, because when I was younger, I let people basically step over my boundaries and never stood up for myself or my beliefs. And this was mostly geared towards my parents. If they told me my clothes were ugly, I wore something different. If they told me I was fat, I would stop eating. If they said I was an awful child, I would just agree. This whole process of setting boundaries with my parents, myself, and even my boyfriend was incredibly draining. It included loads of tears and panic attacks. During June and July, I was in our house every day working from dawn until dusk. My boyfriend came along in the weekends since I was on sick leave due to being an absolute wreck. We got some stuff ready by the second week of August and moved in, since I wanted to live here when my birthday came around, which is August 20th. Since then, my parents have walked in and out of our garden as they please, which they somehow feel entitled to. They push themselves and their presence onto us whenever they like, and just today, they waited for my boyfriend to be out of the house so I was alone, just so they could give me a 2-hour lecture about all the things I'm not doing good enough. They would ask me stuff like, how could you still have boxes in your house when you have 15 days to unpack everything? So I told them I have too many days where I'm busy from morning until evening, and I haven't even done a TV night since I lived here. According to them, I obviously must be doing something wrong. The other big part in every conversation is my boyfriend. He has ADHD and autism, and I can totally understand that anyone who doesn't know him might think his quirks are weird and would have to get used to them. My parents, however, have known him for 5 years and need to stop always talking down to him towards me and other people. Due to his ADHD, he has trouble seeing work and prioritizing. I help him by making schedules and reminding him of things. My parents keep saying stuff like, oh, he is lazy, he isn't good enough for you, he is very aggressive, you are raising a child, and the list goes on and on. I've recently opened up to a few people about my past with my father and how he really was an awful father in several ways, and somehow this all got back to him. He is now accusing me of lying, so much so that I'm even starting to doubt myself. But how can I? I have so many vivid memories, and I used to hurt myself to escape from the mental pain the abuse was causing me. When my boyfriend came home tonight, I was an absolute wreck because of all the things my father said to me. My boyfriend says he can't handle them anymore and tells me that I should break with them. I don't know what to do, because although my psychologist and I have been working around this theme for a few months now, I still feel that typical child-parent obligation and guilt towards them, and they are still my parents after all. Also, I can't imagine my life without my mom. What should I do? Honestly, it really kind of seems like your family's walking all over you. Like you live across the street from your parents, and they come in and out of your house and your yard pretty much whenever they want. Like seriously, that is not okay. That gives you no privacy, and it sounds like they want to have a say in literally everything that you do. I know if I was in your shoes, I would be going crazy at this point. Your boyfriend honestly has a point. The fact that he has autism or ADHD is not in this equation. He is absolutely seeing how this is affecting you, and he really wants you to find some kind of peace in your life. Like seriously, these people do not sound like good parents. They clearly were awful awful towards you when you were a child, especially your father, and it really seems from the outside looking in that they just want to peck away at your happiness. And that is not okay. That seriously is really messed up, and you deserve so much better than that. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would personally be setting up boundaries with my parents. Like if that was me in this situation, I would just straight up say, hey, you can't come over whenever you want, and from now on, you're gonna ask or call me before coming over to my house. Because personally, if I'm gonna live somewhere, it's gonna be my home. It's not gonna be a second home for my parents to try and claim. That is highly inappropriate, and that is not okay. So hopefully something changes soon, because the way your family's treating you is really awful, and you absolutely do not deserve this. My mother-in-law's ex-boss decided to make her funeral all about him, and I've honestly never been more offended in my life. Here's what happened. So my mother-in-law passed away last Christmas Eve. Sadly, she had been battling cancer and was in remission. She took a fall and broke her pelvis. She had an internal bleed, and the doctors just didn't notice it. So that's how she passed. It was so sudden, and when we got the news, my husband and I were scrambling to find our way up there because we lived across the country, and our only vehicle was a super old pickup that gave out on itself just before this happened. Because of this, we weren't able to be a part of the funeral planning, but thankfully made it up there the day before with the help of his best friend. The viewing and the funeral were the same day. So as we walked into the funeral home, my husband noticed her ex's boss. We will call him John. John is not his real name. And honestly, John is a massive piece of garbage. She worked with him for the county and paid bills for different social service organizations and was the go-between for CPS. This man was so useless and she hated him with a passion. He would call her his work wife, much to her chagrin, and joke that he couldn't do anything without her. And you know what? He literally couldn't. She was doing both her and his job. She even built the database that the entire county uses to track all the money spent on the various bills. After she left, the secretary that replaced her ended up getting John fired because she quickly found out that he couldn't do his job because my mother-in-law had been doing it for him. She worked for him during the 2000s when my husband was in high school, and this is going to be important later. And this is also during the time that her husband, my father-in-law, was also diagnosed with cancer. He battled it for years, but eventually he passed away from it in January of 2011. The only reason my mother-in-law put up with his garbage and the job was because she needed the health insurance for her husband's chemo since he couldn't work. And this is something that John took full advantage of because he knew that she couldn't afford to lose her job. During the times that her husband was fighting cancer, she had to take off of work to take care of him. And during those times, her boss would send her home with work because he couldn't do any of it himself. Her husband was dying from cancer, and he was still sucking every last drop of work out of her that he could. He was and still is a pretty awful person. So fast forward to the funeral, and she had not worked for him in like 6 years. So to see him there was a complete slap in the face. Now, I'm not sure how funeral processions work in other countries, but here in the United States, there is a very specific order. First, obviously, is the hearse and my mother-in-law. After that is the closest living relatives. Since my husband was an only child and his father had already passed, he was the closest living relative. Now, she had 3 brothers, so they followed in the car behind ours. Then her cousin, then everybody else. As we are all making our way to the cemetery, I see someone cut in front of her brothers. I turn around and lo and behold, it's her ex-boss. I was so mad. He then tried to cut in front of us. Like, who in the world does this? You are her ex-boss and she hated you. My husband and her brothers were her family, and I thought it couldn't get any worse, but honestly, it definitely did. So since we couldn't make it up there until the day before the funeral, we didn't have a say in the preacher who did her eulogy, and that guy was absolute garbage. He stumbled on his words, he gave a halfway effort, and obviously didn't know anything about her. It was so awkward. But after he spoke, before my husband gets a chance to stand up and speak about her, her ex-boss gets up. He starts talking about her and all the work that she did working for him, and how she did everything and she was his work wife. Are you kidding me right now? And then he talked at length about his work with the county and how they helped the community, and he just kept patting himself on the back. But the absolute icing on the cake was that he said that her work for him when my husband was a teenager directly inspired her to adopt my husband from Paraguay when he was just a baby. And honestly, when I heard that, I was so shocked. Like, are you so self-absorbed that you think that what you did is so important that it inspired her to adopt 15 years earlier? I was squeezing my husband's hand so hard during all of this that I was about to break it in two. We didn't say anything out of respect for his mom, but this is why I say when I pass away, please tell off everybody that I hate. Let them know exactly how I felt and even throw hands if necessary, because at that point, I honestly won't care in the slightest. What an awful human being. Like seriously, that guy is an absolute jerk. He got up there and hogged the stand and just felt the need to try and pat himself on the back. Like, buddy, you did not play an important role in her life. If anything, you were definitely the villain in that story. You made her life incredibly miserable. You did everything you could to try and stifle her life and basically make it so she had to work for you because she couldn't get another job. She literally needed to work there to pay for chemo for her husband. So honestly, that guy's a complete jerk. He absolutely should have been told off, and he had no business standing up there and trying to pretend like he was a good boss. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for refusing to go to my sister's graduation after she rudely declined to go to my graduation 1 year prior? Here's what happened. So for a bit of context, this happened back in 2018. I was graduating from high school the year before my sister graduated college. My sister is the kind of person that is very random, so she can be great or she can be absolutely horrible. A few days before my high school graduation, I asked my sister, we'll call her Anna, that's not her real name, to come along and be at my graduation because even if anybody showed up, it would make me so happy. She also was super open in her schedule because she had finished her own finals for the year. When I asked Anna to come, she said, and I quote, "I'm too busy to waste my time on a little pest like you." Now, obviously, I was angry and sad, but the world kept spinning. The graduation went great, my parents were super proud and all that other stuff. I was still mad though because she literally kept insulting me for like 5 months. Anyways, fast forward to the end of the next school year and she was graduating from her college. All of a sudden, Anna was so nice, she was so sweet to me, and she started begging me to come to her graduation. Now, as a funny side note, I had no idea what day her graduation was, and I had arranged for my best friends and I to go on a trip up north to a beach house that my family owns. So when she told me that, I think you can guess what I said to her. But you know what? I'm gonna say it anyways. I said right to her, "I'm too busy to waste my time on a little pest like you." And as a final icing on the cake, my parents couldn't come to her graduation because they were in the Bahamas with my aunt and uncle. It was a double fatality. And you know what? My trip was amazing. So my sister got served a massive tray of humble pie and is actually way better now and is quite respectful a lot more. So am I the jerk for refusing to go to my sister's graduation after she was so rude about not coming to my high school graduation? I don't think you're the jerk, really. I think it sounds like your sister is super entitled and she thought she could boss you around and mock you for 5 months after not showing up. Like seriously, this probably would have been okay if she didn't then spend the following 5 months treating you like garbage. Like, I don't know about you, but I would personally probably have let it go if she had just shut up about it. But it's the fact that she kept bringing it up and she just had to have some kind of dig at you would probably be the point where I would no longer care and want to try and get her back in some kind of way. So no, I don't think you're the jerk in any kind of way. I think this is kind of one of those karma moments. And honestly, if she wanted you to come to her graduation, then she should have done the same for you. My entitled mother demands to take my Nintendo Switch, claiming that she has every right to take it from me as she's the one that paid for it, despite the fact that it was a Christmas gift. And I've honestly never been more blown away by her entitlement in my life. Here's what happened. So I've always had a strained relationship with my mom. I won't go into details, but just know that we never really got along very well, and it only got worse as I got older. Car rides are absolutely a nightmare because I'm stuck with her, and our worst fights have always usually been in the car. After my parents got divorced when I was about 13 years old, I stayed with my mom because she was remaining in Canada, which is where I've stayed my entire life, while my dad was moving down to America to be closer to his family. Being stuck with her during some of the hardest years of my life absolutely sucked, and I even went to stay with my dad during COVID because I just couldn't be in the house with her 24/7. In the 10th grade, I decided I was going to move in with my dad when I was done with school, and as soon as I got out, I packed up some clothes and I left. I still visit my mom occasionally, but because plane rides are expensive and we still have a lot of tension between us, I don't go very often. Every time I visit, I bring back a little bit more of my stuff, and this will be important later on. One other thing that's important is that for Christmas of 2021, I got a Nintendo Switch, and I know, trust me, I was late to the party, but in my defense, I never really wanted one until then. I was so excited, especially since I got a bunch of games with it. I didn't take it with me when I left. I had meant to bring it with me, but I left it in my room because I had honestly just forgotten it. So after I left, my mom immediately went into my room, despite knowing that I hate it when she does go into my room and goes through my stuff without my permission. And when she was in there, she went ahead and cleaned the place. She threw out a bunch of stuff and unearthed a lot of things in my room. But But what's really important for this is that she found my Nintendo Switch. She took it and plugged it into the charging thing downstairs. Now, I don't know when, but she eventually decided to get a few games for herself and my stepdad to play, which honestly, I don't have any problem with. I'm not very stingy about my Switch as long as nobody's actively trying to take it from me. And this is honestly where the nightmare begins, as my entitled mother shows a level of entitlement that I honestly never thought was possible. Now, the first time I went back to visit my mom, she was driving me back from the airport, and she started talking about all the things that had changed since I'd left, including the new Switch games that she had bought. And when she was explaining this, I just kind of nodded along, because again, it's not that big of a deal. We get back to the house and everything went pretty alright. The dog was really happy to see me again, my stepdad was happy as well, my room looked fine, and in general, it was nice to be back. We played a bunch of games on my Switch and just had a lot of fun, but it didn't take long for my mom and I to start fighting, but it was considerably less stressful since I knew I had somewhere else to go. Before I left, I packed up a bunch of stuff, including my Nintendo Switch. I put it in the case that had my games in it as well, and I put the case in my bag. While my mom was driving me to the airport, she asked me if I had the Switch with me, to which I said yes. She then suddenly got all huffy and upset, which really confused me because the Switch is mine. So I asked her what was the matter, and she just said, "You should have left it at the house." I asked her why I should do that, and she said, "Clearly you didn't care about it enough to bring it with you the first time you left. You wouldn't have even known it existed if I hadn't found it for you in your room." Now, I was again very confused, because while yes, my room was messy, everything had its place and I knew where everything was. It was just in a state of controlled chaos, and that included my Nintendo Switch. I told her that I knew where it was and I just forgot to bring it with me last time. She knows I have a bad memory, but always acts like I forget things on purpose or use it as an excuse. Her response was to tell me I still left it, and that she and my stepdad had so much fun playing on it, so I shouldn't be selfish and take that from them. So I responded by saying, "It's mine. I can do whatever I want with it." But of course, she just had to bring up, "Well, I paid for it." Which, okay, she did, but she only paid half. She split the cost with my dad. And not to mention, it was a gift. And it's kind of awful to take back other people's gifts 2 years later simply because you paid for it. I told her that doesn't change anything, and she still gave it to me. She then said something about my phone, which again was a split cost between her and my dad as another gift. And honestly, at that point, I just looked away and went quiet, which is my way of saying I'm done talking about this. If you say anything else about it, I will ignore you. It's how I've learned to cope with her BS over the years. When an argument isn't going anywhere, it's best just to end it. I promised to bring it with me every time I visit, and that was that. We didn't speak for the rest of the car ride, which was fortunately not very long. I got on my plane, flew back to my dad's, and went home with my Switch, some more clothes, and a few books. We haven't brought it up since, and I'm hoping my mom's gotten over it by now. I've held true to my statement and brought it with me each time I visit, and there is no way she will ever try to take this from me ever again. Wow, the mom in this story sounds incredibly entitled. That whole like I paid for it mentality is so disgusting. Like, what's the point of giving somebody a gift if you're just gonna turn around and be like, "Oh, I want it, it's mine, you gotta give it to me." Like at that point, your mom may as well be loaning out the Switch to you. Like seriously, that is so selfish. If she actually wanted a Switch of her own, she would have bought her own, instead of taking back the one that they literally gave to their child. Like seriously, that's unbelievably selfish. So good for you for standing up for yourself and not taking that for a second. I think I would as well be incredibly annoyed if she tried that on me, because you know what, you're right, it was a gift, and she has no right to try and take it back all of a sudden. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for considering leaving my child in the economy seats on a flight we're taking while me and my boyfriend fly in business class? Here's what happened. So my boyfriend and I have been together for 5 years, and we are trying to organize our next holiday vacation. He has settled on a destination and is so excited at the idea of a family trip. We are looking at flights that will likely be at least 9 hours long, with business class flights, resort stay, and plenty of experiences. Now, he makes significantly more than me, but we will split the cost of the holiday 50-50, including my child's cost. The problem is that he doesn't want my child in the same section on the plane as us. For context, my child is 13 years old. He thinks that my child should be grateful to be getting an international trip and just enjoy the movies and whatever other amenities are on the flight. He wants it so they can pop up and visit us whenever they want in business class, class and that it's not worth the extra cost even if he were a millionaire. Now, I feel like it's weird to sit apart from my child on a 9-hour flight, even if they're comfortable enough on a plane, and I'd probably prefer to downgrade my flight if my boyfriend is unwilling to split that specific cost. He thinks that I'm being weird for wanting to make that concession and that it's not that big of a deal for a child to fly alone. My boyfriend has a viewpoint where children might not appreciate the value of business class and that his parents went on business class while he flew economy on his own. He absolutely wants to enjoy the business class for himself for the long haul on a nice plane. He's fine with me sitting in economy also, or bumping up my child at my own cost, even though he disagrees morally and thinks that I'm being kind of silly, but he would accept it. Now, he has spent plenty of money and time on my child for birthdays, events, and milestones. They get along really well and have had very few upsets. Every now and then I've had to stick up for one or the other, but I feel like it's to be expected with blended families. So am I the jerk if I stayed in business class and made my child ride in the back by themselves? What should I do? Wow, it really does not sound like your boyfriend likes your child at all. Like he wants to intentionally split you guys up on a 9-hour flight. That's a long flight for somebody who's barely a teenager. And I get it, some people grew up differently and they were able to handle it, but we live in a completely different world now. In today's day and age, there's a lot more creepy people out there who are more than willing to be creepy at someone else's expense. And personally, if I was in the original poster shoes, I would not only be picking up on the red flag of, oh, this guy just doesn't like my kid, despite the fact that he's spending money and all that stuff. I mean, just look at how he's acting. But despite all that, he actually wants to split up the family just so he can enjoy the business class by himself. Like, what is he doing? That's so weird to me. Like, why would he not want the kid to sit near them so you can watch and take care of them? Like, that just seems incredibly selfish in my opinion. Like, I don't know, the way you've described this guy does not scream a boyfriend that would be a very good father. It seems like to me, once the ring is on his finger and yours, he's gonna transform into this tough love father, and there's a chance he might treat your kid like garbage. I'm not saying that's gonna happen. I mean, I don't even know the guy, but based on what you're describing and my own like personal experience in life, he kind of fits the bill for awful fathers that I know. So hopefully you can bump your child up to sit near you and your boyfriend, because your boyfriend clearly doesn't care about your kid. And honestly, if I'm gonna be on an international flight, I most definitely would want my child right next to me. I'm struggling with the post-Burning Man crowd every single year at the restaurant I work at, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So as a whole, I'm not a fan of Burning Man. It's one of those things where I'm just gonna say, okay, you do you. Don't push it and its values on me, and I won't lecture you on how terrible its environmental impact is each year. Now, for context, I work at a small popular breakfast restaurant in a hippie beach town. Each year, just after Burning Man, we get an influx of people who haven't adjusted back to real life yet. For example, lots of people walking in without shoes or pants on, trying to hug all the staff and random customers. One year, I kid you not, 2 kids sat on the floor in the middle of a narrow walkway during a weekend rush just to read our special boards. They genuinely seemed surprised when I said, no, you can't do that. But today really bothered me though. I had a very sweet old couple in my section. They had a lot of trouble hearing over all the ambient noise in the restaurant, and a two-top was sat right next to them with just a very narrow planter box separating the tables. The new table was 2 people who had just returned from Burning Man. They had a ukulele with them. The girl started playing and singing, not loud mind you, but loud enough that it was bothering my sweet old couple. I asked the girl to stop or please just step outside to work on her song, but then she just glared at me and then finally stopped. Minutes later, she started playing her stupid ukulele again and singing again, but even softer this time. I was making my coffee rounds and my old couple asked if they could switch tables. The noise of the ukulele was bothering his hearing aid. I was annoyed at this point and blatantly told the annoying singer to please take it outside. Now she, much to my surprise, snapped back at me, saying she was playing as quiet as she could and singing just above a whisper. But I snapped back right at her, and I said that I could still hear her singing and playing, and the point was that I asked her to stop, not continue, but quieter. Honestly, I'm so sick of these crowds, and I really just don't like Burning Man. Honestly, I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't even know what it's about, and I'm already annoyed by people bragging about it. Like, first off, there's no way I'm going to the middle of the desert just to get trapped in the mud. That sounds awful, and there's no way I want to be a part of that. Maybe there's some kind of meaning there or something that I just don't get, but if you're gonna come back from one of these events or whatever you want to call it, you have got to be more respectful of the people that you're around. I don't know, if I worked at that restaurant and someone came up to me to try to hug me, I would be pushing them back very quickly. And as for the lady with a ukulele, that is honestly the most cringy thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, if I was sitting right next to her, I would be super annoyed as well. Like, I just want to eat breakfast. I don't want to hear your awful song. So yeah, I totally get it to the original poster. I'm not a big fan of people who brag about Burning Man, and honestly, overall, I kind of find it just really annoying. Am I the jerk for not telling my fiance that I have over $100,000 saved up in my bank account? Because once she found out, she started giving me the silent treatment, and now I seriously don't know what to do. I recently got engaged to my fiance after 2 years of dating. I told her that we should probably start looking at houses, and she told me that we didn't have the money for a deposit on a mortgage, but I personally have a lot of money in savings, and it's a little bit more than $160,000. My girlfriend was initially just shocked because it was a lot of money for a 24-year-old to have saved up. Now, mind you, I have been extremely lucky in life. After a couple of days, she began to be very annoyed at me because she felt that I was hiding this from her. I told her that I didn't hide it from her. I was just raised to not talk about personal finances with anyone other than someone you're married to. And I figured that us being engaged was close enough that I'd be happy to talk about it finally. I also said that I had actually used these savings to help her before. For example, I've helped pay for her rent a few times, and I've paid a couple $1,000s for her dog to get surgery. She was still quite angry and has been giving me the silent treatment for the past day now. Now, my parents don't see the problem, and her parents understand my perspective, but I think I should have told her when we moved in together last year. None of our friends know because I don't feel comfortable talking about it with them. I've already asked her if we can talk about it when she's ready, and she just said that she'd let me know when she was. Now, I don't think this is relationship ending, but I know she probably wants me to admit I was wrong. But I honestly don't think I've done anything wrong. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you are not the jerk in this situation because you've saved up money. Why on earth would she be mad that her fiance has some kind of savings? Like, wouldn't that be something that you would want in a future spouse? Like, come on. She's being so weird right now for literally no reason. Like, it kind of seems like she's maybe jealous because you have all that money or something like that. Maybe she's thinking that, wow, we could have been spending that money instead of saving it or something like that. But honestly, I would rather have a partner who has a lot of money saved up as opposed to one who has a ton of debt that I don't know about. So if you're gonna have some kind of conversation with her, I would honestly first ask her, why are you upset? Why are you seriously upset that I have over $100,000 saved up in my bank account? And then just wait for her response, because honestly, I would really want to know why this makes her upset. Like, she is just straight up giving you the silent treatment. Like, what is happening right now? That is really weird to me, and it's kind of like a borderline red flag. So hopefully this can all get worked out, because the way your future wife is acting right now is really, really bizarre. Because I know if I was in her shoes and I found out that my significant other had a lot of money saved up, I would be jumping for joy and hugging them, because I would know for a fact that I'm getting married to someone who is very responsible with their money. Today, after serving a 25 top table and after having them pay for all of their meals, I received a $2 tip on a $400 bill, and I've never been more sad and disappointed in my life. Here's what happened. So today, I served a party of 25 people, and they were so rude to me. On top of that, we had a server call out, so I had to pick up other tables since we were busier than normal for a Thursday night. Anyways, this was a birthday party for a 27-year-old. I did my usual greeting, got everybody's drink orders, which mostly consisted of alcohol. Now, I am not a bartender. I'm not even legally allowed to go behind the bar because I'm not 21 years old yet. So I bring out the normal drinks that were ordered, like waters and Sprites and stuff like that, which already took up an entire tray. And also, I've only been serving for like a month. Those trays are hard and very scary. When I passed out the drinks, I was getting yelled at, asking where the alcoholic drinks were. I mean, where do you think they are, buddy? The bartender hasn't made 14 drinks within the 5 minutes it took me to press some buttons just to get your fountain drinks. Like, come on, are you serious right now? Anyways, I get their drinks and they order their food. Most of them got steaks and ribs. You know, stuff that takes a while to cook. So now they're complaining because the kitchen hasn't made like 12 ribeyes and 5 stacks of ribs in the 15 minutes that they've been waiting. Now, I only have 2 arms and I'm very small. I can carry at most like, what, 3 plates? But none of these jerks seem to grasp the concept. They would say stuff like, where's my food? Oh, I don't know. Where do you think it is? Do you think I have a hidden appendage? You think I can just pull the steak right out of my backside? When they do finally get their food, they are running me ragged. Every single time I got them something, they needed something else. I was eventually like, yes, is there anything else y'all need before I leave again? And they just kind of rolled their eyes at me. Their entire overall bill was close to $40. Then I had to split it 8 different ways. We use handhelds to take card payments, minutes, so we could just do it at the table. I scan the card and they put in the tip and sign. I usually look away when people are on the tipping part, just so it doesn't seem like I'm trying to pressure them. But I just had to watch this time. And you won't believe it. 7 of these people pressed that they were not going to give me any tip. One of them paid $100 on a $98 tab and told me just to keep the change. Oh, thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate the $2. Really love that this is less than 1% of the tip. Anyways, I was talking to my coworkers and they said, well, maybe they'll leave cash. You never know. Well, guess what? They didn't. Not even a single penny. So right then and there, I cried. I went to the walk-in and I cried for a good 10 minutes. My other table saw the whole ordeal and they tipped me about 50%, which was about $40, which was nice. They also told my manager I was great and they're going to request me next time, which really made my night a little bit brighter. Now, before anybody asks the question, no, my restaurant does not have gratuity. People were calling corporate claiming that it was theft, so they had to get rid of it. But honestly, I'm just so sick of being treated this way. That is awful. A $400 bill and nobody gave you a tip, and then one jerk is like, here you go, here's $2. Like, what are you doing, man? For me personally, I'm not a fan of tips, but my one personal obvious exception is waiters and bartenders and people who actually provide a service. I absolutely want to tip them, and the original poster in this story is absolutely someone I would tip. They were literally handling a table of 25 people, and every single one of them was rude. They were so demanding, they were impatient, they were demanding stuff all the time and acting super entitled, and then by the end of the night, none of them tipped them except for one schmuck who gave a $2 tip. Like, that is honestly awful. That's so unfair. That server worked incredibly hard, and in my opinion, they absolutely deserve to be tipped. Am I the jerk for telling my parents and brother that if they wanted his ex removed from my wedding pictures, then they would have to pay for it? Here's what happened. Now, to start things off, my brother goes through women like I go through socks, and that is really important to get out of the way first and foremost. I gave him a +1 for my wedding 2 years ago, and he brought his girlfriend of that time. When we were doing the family pictures, he wanted his girlfriend in the pictures. I said we could do some with her and some without. He got mad that I allowed my sister to have her fiance in all the pictures, and my other brother was allowed to have his boyfriend of 5 years, but that I had the audacity to exclude his girlfriend of the week. My parents said that they didn't want any fighting and to just include her in the picture. They were paying for everything, so I said, okay, fine. Now, she isn't in all of our pictures, just the ones with our family and both families. Now, my brother is engaged, and we have had the family over last weekend. His fiance saw our wedding picture on the wall and got into a fight with my brother. He never told her that he had been in a serious relationship with her nemesis. He tried explaining that they only dated for a short while, but she called BS because she was included in the family picture. She then asked to see our wedding album, and sure enough, the girl was in multiple pictures with the family and the in-laws. My brother finally calmed her down, but has asked me to take down the picture or have his ex removed. I said that it was expensive, so he would have to pay for it himself. He tried complaining to our parents, and they said that I was being childish, but I reminded them that they were the ones who insisted I give it to him. I said that they were welcome to pay for the editing. They said that I was a jerk and that they already paid for the pictures once. So what do you think? Am I the jerk in this situation? Because honestly, I don't think I am in the slightest. No, you are not the jerk. Your brother is an idiot. You knew exactly what was going to happen. You knew for a fact he was not going to stick around with this lady, and it was only going to end as soon as it started. Like, seriously, your parents are also to blame here. They could have just put their foot down and said, no, just take pictures without her, and then we can take some pictures with her. Because he has a history of just going through women like socks, like you said. So no, you're not the jerk. If he really wants to have his ex-girlfriend removed from your wedding photos, then he can pony up the money and get that done himself. An entitled coworker steals my cupcakes from the employee fridge. But even after he had been asked by multiple people if he took them, he denied it with a grin on his face. So I decided to get revenge on him by causing havoc in his life for literally over a month. And I've never felt better about getting back at somebody in my life. Here's what happened. So for some background information, we had an older hospital where over time we had upgraded their CCTV, their security door access, and nurse call and paging systems. I'd been at this company for a few years, but they had been doing all the sparky work here for over a decade. So we knew the place really well. The buildings, the people, the staff's positions and job roles, everything. I worked there a lot, so I got to know the drama, the politics, and the secret affairs too. I mean, after all, voices carry into ceiling spaces, you know. I got to lead a team in building and maintaining each of the new systems. These systems had been chosen because they could all work together to achieve the client's needs. Plus, they were all networked. They were also standalone because government government IT didn't want the third-party gear on their networks. We had to install all the infrastructure and equipment. I had network hubs all over the place where I could access all 4 of these systems. So in summary, I had admin and installer access to over 170 cameras, over 520 doors and gates, the security system, and the hospital-wide paging system. So anyways, let's get started with the story. And also, for the sake of the story, all names in this story are fake. So one Tuesday, I was sitting at one of my network hubs doing regular testing and maintenance. I'd just been checking the CCTV, watching Janine do that lopsided, stumbling walk she does in high heels, and at that point, I believed that I had done enough continuous work at 10 o'clock in the morning to deserve a treat. That morning, Nancy, a nurse in pediatrics, had brought cupcakes in for the ward staff. Nancy had kept 2 individually packaged cupcakes aside for me, clearly labeled with my name, in the ward staff room fridge. I walked the 5 minutes over to the ward, humming a song basically proclaiming that I'm about to have some cupcakes. But when I open the fridge, there are no cupcakes. I mean, there were maybe 20 still there in a big clear Tupperware container, but mine wasn't there. Not the ones that Nancy set aside. Now, before I lost my mind altogether and flipped the fridge over, I decided that I better go check and see if something dire has happened. I mean, maybe one of these kids needed these cupcakes to stay alive. Maybe those cupcakes could save the planet. Work at that point was forgotten, and this is right when my investigation begins. So I go and speak with Nancy. First, I ask if she saw that Janine was wearing heels again. We both have a chuckle at the situation. And then I bring up the cupcake situation. We went through the whole situation of saying, well, they were there before, as well as Nancy checking the fridge to confirm my story. I mean, it's like she doesn't understand that I wouldn't joke about this. We then begin some interviews, and no one in the ward is owning up to it. And we believe them. So someone not of this ward has clearly taken the cupcakes. The pediatric nurses are livid, and myself and my team want some answers. And it's a funny thing. Once cameras and swipe card doors had been installed in the hospital, people forgot all about them. They forget that we always watch them. They also forget that doors have logs to see who went where and when. So back to the hub I go. A quick audit of door access reveals that Jerry went in the staff room between the relevant times. Checking the CCTV, I see Jerry walking out of the staff room carrying a bag and wiping his mouth. I rewind it, pause, and zoom in. It is absolutely frosting. The hub's rack did nothing wrong, so I step back and stare at the wall. The first 8 thoughts that go through my head get caught in the filter, and I eventually calm down a little and I head back to the nurses. They all see me coming and they gather around, because sick kids at this point are just an afterthought. I tell them I know who did it, and I don't want to say who it is just yet, but I need some time to think, and I ask if we can keep this all on the down low for now. They say they understand and immediately ask who it is. So I head back to the hub to continue working. As I'm swiping my card across the reader, in that 1 second it takes the red light to turn green, a plan starts to play like a cinematic in my head. It's like my subconscious has known about this day for ages and is now premiering its devious feature. It screens the permutations, possible flaws, and ramifications. I'm not sure how long I stared at the door, rewinding, pausing, and fast forwarding. The plan is beautiful, and I promise my brain that they will be getting a cupcake soon. Now, Jerry is a general orderly who was supposed to float around the whole hospital, helping any ward and pretty much anyone else when they paged him. But he didn't though. Jerry didn't like walking around because Jerry was lazy, and he did not like any of the patients. He used to work in the wards, but couldn't find one without close supervision or patience, so he moved to day shift general duties. Jerry hated to be made to walk from one end of the hospital over to the other, and that's when I realized Jerry hated the swipe cards and the electronic door locks. Some people just straight up don't get technology. Some people just hate change and love to complain about it, while not taking the effort to learn how to work it. While responding to maintenance tickets, I had to listen to Jerry complain numerous times about the doors. So for this and other reasons, I did not like Jerry. Jerry knew my distinctive name. He knew what I did here, and he saw the other 20 cupcakes and still decided to eat mine. So yeah, it's time to mess with Jerry. At the hub, I make the necessary improvements to the systems. I select a variety of well-chosen doors, set up auto-paging for different events, create different calendars, set some automated conditions, so everything swapped and changed around. Once I'm set up with the program on hold, I go see Nancy. I need to give Jerry a chance to own up, even though I'm pretty sure he won't. I ask Nancy to page Jerry so that she can ask him about the cupcakes. Now, Nancy is not surprised that it's Jerry, and she is completely on board. The other nurses gather and ask what's happening, and I tell them that Jerry's about to work off some of his belly. They aren't surprised it's Jerry either, and they swear to keep it secret. So I walk to the maintenance manager's office while Nancy summons Jerry. Jerry, and I walk in grinning. All he says is, "What?" with a smile. He knows me. We've worked closely together here for a while. We're mates, and he's seen that look on my face before. I ask him to just print any maintenance tickets generated by Jerry, and that's for his card, his door, the gate, or pager issues. But he is not to take any action on them. I'll pick them up while I'm here doing other work, and I'll deal with him personally. Now, when I tell my friend about the cupcakes and my plan, he's not only on board, he laughs so hard he has a coughing fit for about 25 seconds. I head back to check in with Nancy and find out that Jerry has, ever so accommodatingly, denied all knowledge. Now, what I had created in my systems was a randomized intermittent program, all focused on Jerry's card. A program that would send Jerry's pager a message to go somewhere on the other side of the complex, seemingly at random, and it's all based on Jerry swiping his card at particular doors. Or in some cases, the gate to the staff park wouldn't work, or his card would stop working, making him go to get it revalidated. Or a siren would sound for a few seconds when he entered certain rooms. I already knew all the staff's routines and areas of responsibility. The patients wouldn't be adversely impacted, and Jerry didn't do anything anyways. So I go back to the hub and I click the go buttons. The first week comes around, and by Friday, in 4 days, Jerry had raised 18 tickets. I grabbed a stack of paper from the maintenance manager and went to the orderly's office to find Jerry. While I gently fanned the tickets, he listed off all of the weird things he had been experiencing. He was explaining how the duty nurses were getting annoyed at his unexpected arrivals when I interrupted him. I asked him if he had seen anyone take my cupcakes from the pediatric fridge on Tuesday. Now, the puzzled face he put on was a head shorter than mine, but unfortunately, I did not get any confession. I mean, I had only had 50 specially selected doors active in the program these past 4 days. So that Friday afternoon, after him deciding not to confess, and after just 1 week of me messing with him, I clicked the all button and added the other 470 other doors. By midday Wednesday, there were only 6 tickets raised. I checked the system logs and found out exactly why. In just 3 days, there had been a mixture of over 85 events, but Jerry just didn't have time to log the tickets. When I spoke to Jerry that Wednesday, he demanded that I do my job and fix this stuff. And why had I not done anything yet? But still, no confession and no apology. So time to play some head games. I told him I would sort it all out. And when I went to check the systems that Wednesday midday, I decided to stop the program. But on Friday morning, I turned it back on again. I let it run Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I almost felt sorry for him this week when I was talking to him and considered stopping the plan. But then I remembered why I didn't like him so much. The one thing I haven't mentioned yet is that standing staring at that door, I already knew Jerry was in the final stages of disciplinary management. And this was the linchpin of the plot to the film that was running through my head. Now, remember how I said before that I know all the drama, the politics, and the secret affairs? Well, I knew that one of those disciplinary warnings, among other things, was for taking people's lunches on 4 different occasions. And not because he needed it either. That's the reason why the nurses and the maintenance managers were not surprised that it was Jerry, and that's why they were all on board. And they knew too, everyone did. That was the reason why he didn't kick up a stink to his manager or even confess. I didn't want to get him fired. I just wanted to make him apologize. I mean, after all, cupcakes are a serious business. The final week rolls around, and the program ran from Monday until Tuesday. The plan was only ever going to be for a month, or until Jerry confessed and apologized. Before this Tuesday, I had a chat with Nancy. I'd ask her if she wouldn't mind a cameo in our little vignette. She understood and she agreed. When I was talking with Jerry in the orderly's office, Nancy arrived and handed me a personalized pair of cupcakes, and they looked and were packaged the exact same as the missing ones a few weeks earlier. As Nancy was walking away, the now silent Jerry looked from the package to my shirt and then to me. I held up the tickets, mustered my best Adam Hills, and said, "Don't be a jerk, mate." He was silent and very angry. I could see that he had realized I'd been doing this on purpose. If he made an official complaint, the missing cupcakes would come up and he would lose his job. Also, during our chats, he had heard me say intermittent issues many times. Jerry was angry because he knew he couldn't do a thing about it. I walked up to the pediatrics ward where Nancy and I were going to eat these treats, and I hummed a tune the entire way. Wow, this guy went to crazy extents just to get revenge on this guy. Like, first off, this Jerry guy did not seem like a good person in general. Like, he really kind of seemed like a jerk, and he was obviously like stealing food from the hospital and constantly getting away with it. And that, in my opinion, is so inappropriate. Like, seriously, don't mess with other people's food. But the way the original poster went about getting back at them is so amazing. This really is straight out of a movie. Like, this guy drove Jerry nuts for over a month. They were messing with with his system, causing all sorts of alarms and problems to go off, literally making Jerry question his sanity. So good for the original poster for getting some beautiful revenge. Jerry absolutely had it coming, and his actions absolutely had to be punished. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled passenger claims that they're vegetarian, but after they give me a really bad attitude, I decide to maliciously comply and full out expose them for lying just to try and work the system. Here's what happened. Okay, so to start this off, I'm a cabin crew member, so I'm a flight attendant. I've been doing it for over 10 years. Any issue that crops up during my workday, I will bend over backwards to accommodate people if I can. However, there are unfortunately a handful of people that are dishonest to try and get what they want. Fake injuries to try and get upgraded, fake birthdays, you name it. People have tried it, and believe you me, I've had loads of scenarios where people try to cheat the system because it makes them feel special, or that it makes them feel like they one-up me or something like that. So let me tell you about a fake vegetarian I had on board. He was flying in economy in the second from the last row. He wanted the pasta option. I apologized and told him due to popular demand, we had run out in the middle of the cabin, but we did have the chicken option instead if he wanted that. Without skipping a beat, he said to me, I'm vegetarian. Last time they brought me a meal from business class, so I'll just wait for that. Now this is something I would have offered anyways just to be nice if it was available, as I'm not too much of a jerk and I generally like helping people out if I can. After all, this is a 747, not a 7-Eleven, as the saying goes. Anyways, the way he just expected it right off the bat before I could even offer a solution left a slightly bad taste in my mouth. And also, I smelled a rat. I'm about 99% sure that I had cleared in an empty packet of smoky bacon crisps from him earlier, and no, they weren't the veggie brand, as I have the same ones occasionally. I was certain that he was being picky and wanted a higher quality meal. Plus, any regular flyer would know how often we run out of the veggie option, and to just pre-order the veggie meal. I said to him, well, it's unfortunate that you didn't pre-order the vegetarian meal. I will see what I can do though. Give me about 5 minutes to finish up here. Anyways, I went up to the business class, and they had also run out of the veggie option. So I went up to first class, and I asked if they could spare anything. We ended up putting a few leaves together with a bit of dressing. But then I thought to myself, I could probably have some fun with this fake vegetarian. So this is when my malicious compliance came in. I brought it back on a silver tray and held it above his eye line so he couldn't see what it was. I explained that unfortunately the vegetarian business class option had run out. Then he went to cut me off so he could complain, but I held up my hand and said, however, I managed to go one step further and I got the last vegetarian meal from first class. Then I pulled the linen cloth off the top of the tray as I placed the salad down in front of him, and it really was a very basic but large salad, and his face said it all. His face went from smug, as if he had somehow worked the system, to him thinking, wait, what is that? And all in about 2 seconds flat. He then said, I wanted something hot, I'll just have the chicken then. I put on a shocked face and I said to him, oh, I can't give you that, sir, I would feel awful. He responded to me by saying, don't worry about it, it's fine. I gave him a look as if to say, are you sure you're a vegetarian? And then I brought back the chicken, which, by the way, at this point had been sat drying up in the oven a little bit longer. So honestly, buddy, bon appetit. And just to say, even if he was really a vegetarian, he should have had it pre-ordered instead of acting like an entitled jerk. Wow, what a great story. That guy 100% was not a vegetarian. If he was a vegetarian and suddenly he decided, oh, I'm gonna eat meat, he would be sick to his stomach. I have friends who are vegetarian, and they tell me if they eat any kind of meat or anything that's outside their diet, they get a really bad stomach ache and they can get food poisoning really quickly. Like, this guy is clearly one of those people who just tried to work the system. So it's honestly really cool to see that the original poster put them in their place. Am I the jerk for telling my wife that I don't like her new job? Here's what happened. So my wife and I have been married for 12 years and we have 3 kids, a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old. During the pandemic, my wife's job allowed her to switch to 100% work from home. They never required her to go back to the office because her productivity actually increased, so there was no need. It made things easier on us too. I dropped the kids off at school and daycare in the morning, and she picked them up in the afternoon. She was able to keep up with a few things around the house during the day, and we saved on gas, car maintenance, and other stuff. A few months ago, she was contacted by a recruiter about a job. It would be a nice step up in her career path, as well as a boost in her pay. But there were drawbacks. The company had no work from home policy and would require her to work in the office, and this was apparently non-negotiable. It would also be a 45-minute commute for her. We talked it over a lot, and I expressed my concerns about how this would impact our daily lives. I told her that I don't necessarily think that the bump in pay is worth the major changes in our daily lives, not to mention the stress that a long commute can have on people, and that could impact their mood, as well as how they interact at home. She assured me that everything would be fine, and that we would adjust as a family, and soon the new routine would just become our new normal. I told her that I would never tell her not to take a job, but I just don't know if it's worth the changes that it's going to bring. Ultimately, the decision was hers, and she accepted the new job, and now by this point she's been at it for about 10 weeks. To say it's been an adjustment is an understatement. She wakes up and leaves before the kids even get up. She will help get a few things ready for them before she goes, but the entire morning kid routine is on me. I also do both drop-off and pick-up for all the kids too. Evenings have been a huge mess because I get home and try to get the kids distracted while I try and start dinner. When my wife gets home, she is usually stressed from the drive. I mean, after all, her commute has turned into an hour-long ordeal, and this is because of traffic and construction. And it takes about 15 minutes for herself to calm down before eating alone. Then after dinner, she's going to bed early because she then has to wake up early. I told her that I feel her new job has put an unfair amount of household and childcare duties on me, and that she is being far less present in our lives when she's home. She told me that we just need to give it more time to adjust and things will get easier. I told her that 10 weeks is a pretty good adjustment period, and I honestly hated it so far. She then said I was being an unsupportive jerk and that I just need to give it more time. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Yeah, it really kind of seems like this has thrown a wrench in your household. So from my perspective, it seemed like there was like an equal split with responsibilities involving like the kids and household duties, but now ever since she got that job, it seems like it's very lopsided. So I can completely understand where the original poster's coming from. So I don't think you're the jerk in this situation for saying, hey, I'm kind of overwhelmed here. But I also do kind of agree with the wife in this situation. I think you just need to give it a little bit more time to try and see if things can work itself out. I mean, she did just start her new job. I think maybe just giving this some more time to see if things can work itself out, or even hiring like a babysitter or a housekeeper of some kind just to try and make ends meet, might make things a little bit easier for you and her. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. People have to do that all the time, especially when both adults are working a full-time job. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk for expressing your opinions, but I think your wife is right. I think you need to give this more time and try and accommodate this new job with some kind of outside help. A friend I met is mentally ill because I stopped talking to him, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So I was in an online app and I met a friend. Before meeting, I already told him I'm not looking for a relationship, but I am looking for a friendship or a companionship while I'm in the country. So we met, and after that, he asked me what I think of him, and I said that I'm just into friendship and I don't see him that way. He accepted that, but he kept texting me every single day. We just exchanged a few messages every day, and he texts me whenever he has a problem, and the problem is usually mostly suggestive, if you know what I mean. He says he has some suggestive desires, and this is also why he wants to be in a relationship. Well, he kept asking for my address and insisting to introduce himself to my family, but I don't want to because I don't want to be rushed into a relationship, and I'm not into him either. Now, he is a bit mentally disabled, and I don't want to diagnose him, but he does say he is seeing a psychiatrist. Moving forward, I recently blocked him because he kept asking for my address and asking to meet my sister when I repeatedly said no. Also, when I didn't reply about my address, he sent me an image of a weather forecast shaped like a certain body part, if you know what I mean. It may be funny to him, but I found it absolutely disgusting. So he has been trying to call me, which goes straight to voicemail. And now he's asking me to call him back or read his messages or just reply because apparently it's affecting his mental health. And at this point, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should message him or just choose my safety. I honestly think he's pitiful to have this mental health ruined because I blocked him. But I'm also scared to message him because he might act aggressively at some point. I have a history of having bad relationships, and my ex used to be manipulative and be awful towards me verbally. So with all things considered, I seriously don't know what to do. That is not your friend. I just want to say that first and foremost. This guy is a grade A creep. He is not your friend in the slightest. You need to stop referring to him as a friend. You need to block this guy across the board. He is trying to manipulate you. Who in their right mind would be like, hey, let's meet up. What's your address? Can I talk to your sister? Like, dude, take a hint. She is not interested in you and you need to move on. So honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would be blocking this guy and completely ignoring him. Also, his mental illness and his mental health is not your problem. He's trying to use that as some kind of crutch just to get pity points points so that he can try and spend some quality time with you, if you know what I mean. I mean, he's already sent you some sketchy messages from what you've described. Like, why even entertain this loser for even another second? So if I was in your shoes, I would block him and move on with my life, because that guy is not a good friend. Instead, that guy is a complete creep. My entitled neighbor hits my car and then lies about it. So I decide to get revenge by ruining over 300 pounds of meat that he had in his freezer while he was away on vacation. And I've never felt better about getting back at a neighbor in my life. Here's what happened. So for starters, this happened about 5 or 6 years ago. For some context, my neighbor, we'll call him Chester, that's not his real name, is your stereotypical weekend outdoorsman type. He owns at least 10 different baseball caps, and they all have camouflage on them. He's one of those types of people. He drives a Jeep, which will be important later on, and usually spends his weekends either hunting, fishing, or prepping for when the world ends. I tried to explain to him once that we were within the fallout range of a major city, so if it got hit, we would be done for either way. But you know what? Whatever. Everybody needs a hobby, and some people's is collecting canned peaches. Now, 2 weeks before the revenge, I came outside to see my car had a broken window on the passenger side, and that part of the frame was dented just above the door handle. I can tell immediately from the size and shape of the dent exactly what it is from. As I said, my neighbor Chester drives a Jeep, and mounted on his front grille is a cable winch that he uses for pulling stumps and all this other stuff. It juts out almost 1.5 feet in front of the bumper and is made of solid steel. Anyone with a picture of the winch and the shape of the dent in my car could probably CSI that pretty quickly just from eyeballing it. The dent is almost identically shaped and situated at the same height the winch was mounted. On top of that, Chester lives directly across the street from me, and he likes to back into his driveway. Conveniently enough, my car is always parked on the street, so he has ample opportunities to hit it if he wanted to. I asked Chester about it, and without saying anything, he shook his head while biting his lip like some kind of clueless cartoon character. I then asked him if anyone who borrowed his car might have done it, because the winch itself was pretty scratched up, almost like it's been ramming into things all over town. Again, Chester silently shakes his head and then tries to tell me it was probably teenagers. No exposition, mind you. He just blamed it on teenagers. At this point, I was fuming, but kept my composure and went home to call the police, as well as my insurance company, to report it. I managed to get a competent police officer who told me point blank that it was clear what happened, but without a witness, it would be pointless to try and prove it. The insurance agent was equally certain of Chester's guilt, but ended up recommending I pay out of pocket for the repair. Since I was parking on the street, it was a factor the insurance company might use against me if I filed a claim at all. When it came time for them to recalculate and adjust my monthly rate, I could see a significant increase. So it's right about then that I decided to get some revenge. So essentially, a few $100s out of pocket right now could save me several hundred a year going forward if my rate was to increase due to my own negligence, which is what the claim would unfortunately be categorized as. A raw detail for sure, but at least he was honest with me. Fast forward to 2 weeks later, and Chester and his family are going up north to rough it in nature for a week. And despite my cold attitude towards him in recent days, he asked me to keep an eye on his house while he's gone, since I'm the only person in the neighborhood that he trusts apparently. I agreed to it, not because I had any type of revenge in mind, but because he gifted me a large case of beer for my service. His one request was that I call him if we have any extreme weather, because he would need me to check on something. 2 nights after he left, we had a nasty storm, wind, hail, and even a few rolling blackouts. The next morning, I called Chester to ask him what he needed me to check on, but he didn't answer my call. Knowing Chester, he had probably set up camp in some rural part of America with absolutely no cell phone service, even though he asked me to call him if this happened. After a few failed attempts, I went over to his house to inspect for any potential issues that might have arisen from the weather. I figured he was probably worried about his garage flooding, since his yard was frequently a moat after heavy rain. I went into the garage and there was no flooding, but something caught my eye immediately. 4 large freezer chests lined up side by side, taking up a huge chunk of the wall. I peeked inside one and immediately realized what Chester was worried about. All 4 of them were packed from floor to lid with meat. Some of it was still in packages from the grocery store, and some of it was wrapped in butcher's paper. It was likely game picked up from Chester's hunting exploits, but on top of one of the freezers was something else that seemed out of place. It was a red Solo cup full of frozen water, with a penny sitting on top. I thought that was weird and dismissed it immediately, but curiosity got the better of me later that day when I got home, I decided to Google it, and what I learned instantly clicked as a way to get the ultimate revenge on Chester for hitting my car and sticking me with the repair bill. There's an old life hack that people used to use when they went on vacation. You freeze a cup of water, then place a penny on top of it and stick it in your freezer. If the power goes out, the water will eventually melt, and the penny will fall to the bottom of the cup. If you return home and the penny is at the bottom of the cup, your freezer was off for an extended period of time, and now everything in it has potentially defrosted and become unfit for consumption. I immediately got up and ran back to Chester's garage to scope out the legitimacy of my nefarious deed. As luck would have it, Chester's circuit breaker was hidden behind a tool shelf, not directly visible to the naked eye. Who would put a shelf in front of a circuit breaker? Well, Chester, of course, so I promptly took the cup out of the freezer and sat it on Chester's porch to let it get in the sun. After a few hours, the ice had melted enough that the penny slipped right to the bottom of the cup. I then put the cup back in the freezer, being very careful to position it exactly where it was when I took it out, all before moving on to the last phase of my insidious plan. I started blowing up Chester's phone with calls and frantic text messages. Chester, where is your circuit breaker? I can't find it and your power is off. Get back to me as soon as possible. I did this countless times over the next 2 days before I finally got a call from Chester. He told me immediately where to go in his garage to find the circuit breaker, which of course I already knew thanks to my prior detective work. I sat the phone down and flipped the circuit breaker twice, once to turn it off and then a second time to turn it back on, giving it just enough time to mess with the digital clocks on all of his appliances. And with that, my revenge was complete. All that was left was for Chester to come back home, which took another 2 days. When Chester got back home, I was nervous, but eager to see if my charade had worked. The next day, I got a knock on my door. It was Chester. He asked me if I wanted some meat to give to my dogs. Apparently, the power had been off for far too long, and all the meat in his freezer had thawed out while he was gone, so he was throwing it all away. I asked him how much he had, and he said it was probably somewhere close to 300 pounds of meat. He didn't want to waste it, so he asked if I wanted to give some to my dogs. I graciously helped myself to roughly half a freezer's worth of meat, and some of it which I stored in my own fridge, with the rest of it, Chester being nice enough to offer to hold on to in his freezer until I needed it. The kicker is that Chester had no idea the meat never actually defrosted, and it was still perfectly good. That very night, I helped myself and my dogs to a couple of nice steaks, courtesy of old Chester himself, who was still busy walking the neighborhood, unloading the tainted meat on anyone who had a cat or a dog that might want it as a meal. It was at least 4 or 5 months before me and my dogs went through all the meat Chester had given us. I don't know if I made all my money back for the repairs on my car, but at least I didn't have to buy any meat for at least a fortnight. Honestly, that is hilarious. This guy lied straight up to your face. He said, no, I didn't hit your car, despite the fact that this was literally a perfect indent into your car. Like, this guy was a straight up liar. I can't stand people who lie like that. Literally just own up to it, or at least leave a note and be like, hey, I hit your car and I'm really sorry. So while this is kind of a sketchy thing to do, I honestly find this story really funny because the original poster decided, you know what? If I'm gonna suffer, well then congratulations, you're gonna suffer as well. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled mother refuses to pay me the full amount that I'm owed after staying up all night and watching her children for far longer than we had agreed. And I've never been more frustrated and shocked in my life. Here's what happened. So for a bit of backstory, I've been babysitting since I was about 12 years old. I've been a summer full-time nanny before I got the job at the restaurant I work at now, and I love being around kids. Up until this point, I hadn't had to stop watching any particular child. Usually I would cease my service when children get old enough to be left at home by themselves. I was a junior in high school when this happened, and I knew the boys and the entitled mother of the story really well beforehand, or so I thought at least. So I really had no issue watching the children. They were very polite and well-behaved boys, and I never had any odd feelings towards the parents up until this point. So when the boy's mother asked me if I was free to babysit them, I was like, sure, why not? About 2 days before I went to babysit, I did all of my usual first time working for this family type of things. I asked them if there's any allergies. How long do you want me to watch the boys? Are you comfortable with the pay rate we agreed upon still? Do any of them need medication? And after going through the questions, everything was normal. The plan was I was going to be babysitting from 4 p.m. after school until 9 o'clock p.m. that evening. I would feed the boys, give them a bath, get them in their pajamas, make sure the little one went potty before bed at 7 o'clock, and I would get paid when the parents got home from their dinner party. It was $5 per kid per hour for a total of $50 when they arrived. That's really going to be important later on. The night I'm supposed to babysit comes around, and it's a fairly normal experience. The boys were, as they always were during church, well-behaved and very respectful. They stayed out of trouble when I made dinner. They didn't get fussy during bath time. They went to bed after a story and a few lullabies. Everything was great. And then I had 2 hours to do my homework. So this honestly was great. Well, 8:30 rolls around and the entitled mother texts me that they're going to be about 30 minutes late, as the party ended at about 9 o'clock instead of 8:30. I say to them, oh, that's fine. And I text my dad and he says that's fine as well. So I go back to my homework. Now, me having no concept of time, unless I'm really paying attention, I don't notice when 9:30 passes and it hits 10:30. My dad calls because he's concerned that I'm not home yet, and I'm concerned as well because this entitled mother told me that she would be home only half an hour later, not a full hour. So I tell him I'll check in. I text her and I get no reply. I try to call and I end up having to leave a voicemail. I wasn't left a number for the father, whom I hadn't even met at all before this because he traveled for work. Also because his phone was broken at the time and couldn't receive or send calls. So I was stuck there until the couple got back. I called my dad and let him know the situation, and he said that if she didn't come back by midnight, then I need to call the police. I thought this might be a bit excessive, but nonetheless, I agreed. 11 o'clock rolled around and I text her again, and I still get no response. I call again and it rings until voicemail, and I leave another one, still trying to be polite. But I add a bit of urgency as it is a school night and my dad expects me home. 11:30 hits and I text her again. This time I get a response. We're on our way home, don't worry, we'll be there in 15 minutes. So I'm relieved. I text my dad and he just tells me that he'll wait up for me. I start packing up my stuff because I've finished my homework. I check on the boys to make sure they're asleep, as well as the fact that they're okay just one last time, and I'm prepared to go as soon as they walk in the door. Well, 11:45 rolls around and they still haven't shown up. I'm a bit annoyed now, but I give them the benefit of the doubt and think maybe there's some kind of traffic. Well, midnight rolls around next and they still aren't here. I text her again, but this time I'm not polite at all. I say to this entitled mother, I need to go home. My dad is worried and wants me home. I have school tomorrow and a physics test. When will you be here? I get no response. I put my stuff by the front door and I text my dad again. He's annoyed and tells me that if she doesn't show up by 1 o'clock in the morning, then he's coming over to watch the boys so I can go home to bed. At 12:30, I get a text message. We'll be home in just a few. We got hung up. By 12:45, the couple gets home. I text my dad that they're home, and he says that he expects me home as soon as possible. The entitled mother comes in with her husband, and neither of them looked like they were in a rush. I was visibly annoyed, and the husband looked extremely confused by this. This is also the first time he has ever met me, and he thought that I would be older. The entitled mother said, "Thank you for watching the boys." She then hands me an envelope, and I look inside to see $40. I don't want to be rude, but you owe me more money than this. The entitled mother says, "We agreed on $40, right?" I said, "No, it was $50, $5 per kid per hour." And it's right about then that the husband chimes in. The husband says, "Honey, we're really underpaying her then." He looked like he was doing the math in his head. She says to him, "No, we agreed upon this, so this is what you're getting." Now, when she said this, I was stunned at this point. Up until now, this entitled mother had never shown any signs of entitlement, and after years of being around an alcoholic mother, I knew the difference between drunk and sober, and the entitled mother was completely sober, so I was extremely confused. The husband said, "Honey, when did you tell her that we'd be home?" And the entitled mother said, 1 in the morning. And at this point, I couldn't hide my shock, but the entitled mother is already shooing me out the door. I'm stunned as I'm pushed with my stuff into the driveway and given a swift goodbye. I look at the contents of the envelope and I'm still extremely angry by this. I text my dad that I'm on my way home, and as I start to get into my car to leave, the husband comes out and wants to talk to me. He asks me, "How much do I owe you?" I say to him, technically almost $60, but it's fine. The husband then says, "No, take this." He then hands me two 20s. I'm sorry about her. She told me that she had a sitter for the entire night. I thought you were a college student. That was unfair. Please drive home safe. I'll pay you the rest this weekend at church. And true to his word, he gave me the last 20 that he owed me, as well as a bit extra for the troubles. This happened 2 more times before I refused to watch the boys ever ever again. I still see the boys at church, and I love them so much, but I couldn't keep doing this as a high school student, and the boys thankfully understood. Wow, you did this 2 more times? What in the world were you thinking? I'm sorry, but there's no way after that first time that this lady was trying to stiff me my money, I would have shown up to that house and tried to watch her kids. Sure, you love the kids, and those are good boys and you enjoy spending time with them and being able to take care of them and babysit them, but their mother is a complete Karen. Like, she wasn't gonna pay you your full wage, and she lied about how long you were planning on staying there to watch them. Like, it was literally a school night, and she was making you stay there until what, 1 in the morning? Like, that is not okay. That's completely inappropriate. Thank goodness the husband in this situation actually has a good head on his shoulders. Otherwise, you would have been stiffed a lot of money, and that honestly wouldn't have been fair. So good for you for getting out of that weird babysitting job, because this entitled Karen was taking advantage of you as well as completely underpaying you, and you absolutely did not deserve that in the slightest. Am I the jerk for not wanting to pay extra for a gift my mother-in-law gave me, even though I never asked for the gift in the first place? Here's what happened. My mother-in-law bought me a new coffee machine. I don't know why, as the one I have is still working fine, but whatever, I accepted it. Before leaving, she told me I needed to pay her $30. I asked her why, and she said that she planned on putting only $50 on the gift, but the cheapest coffee machine she could find was around $80, so I needed to give her the $30 that she added for the machine. That really confused me, because if she only planned on putting a certain amount of money in the gift, then why not just give up the coffee machine idea and buy something that actually was $50? She said she didn't care about paying more if it made me happy, but I said, well, clearly you do care, otherwise you wouldn't be asking me for the extra $30. She said it was just a matter of principle, and that if I had any manners, I would pay her. And after she said that, she left. She later texted my husband that she was waiting on the $30 and would take back the coffee machine if I didn't. I told my husband to respond that she could come back and take it because I was not going to give her the $30. My husband is not okay with that because he got attached to the machine, whatever that means, and to just give her the $30. I told my husband if he wanted to keep the machine, then he should give his mom the money that she wants. But he said that I needed to do it because the gift is originally mine, even though I never asked for it. He said I was making this harder than it needed to be, and I was selfish for not paying the extra $30 for the coffee machine his mom got me, especially knowing that he likes it. I have a hard time seeing how I'm wrong, so I'm coming here because there might be a chance that I am in the wrong. Should I just give his mom the $30 like she's asking for and just be done with it? Am I the jerk here? What should I do? Your mother-in-law sounds incredibly weird. Listen, if you're gonna give somebody a gift of some kind, you're not gonna then turn around and be like, actually, you need to pay for this gift. At that point, it's not a gift anymore. This is now like a forced purchase, and it's a forced purchase you did not ask for. That is incredibly weird in my opinion. There's no way this is appropriate. It's incredibly rude, this is so disrespectful, and she's just trying to guilt trip this person into paying for it as if they had any kind of skin in the game when it came to purchasing this stupid coffee machine. The original poster seems like the only person who has any kind of head on their shoulders or who is in any kind of way like being rational about this. Like the mother-in-law buys the original poster a gift that's really for the husband and then expects the original poster to pay for it. Like that's really what it kind of seems like at this point. So no, I wouldn't pay for anything. In fact, I would take that coffee machine out today if I was in your shoes and I would drop it off at her house and say to her, here you go, I'm not paying for anything, and then just be done with it. If your husband really thinks you're being irrational and if he really likes this coffee machine, then he would pay his mother the $30 she's demanding. So no, I don't think you're the jerk. I think your mother-in-law and your husband are being a bunch of weirdos, and there is no reason that you should be forced to pay for a gift that was given to you that you never even asked for in the first place. Am I the jerk for refusing to give my son's room to my cousin who is currently living with us and demanding to take his room? Here's what happened. So to start things out, my partner and I have 2 kids, Luke and Jay. Luke is 18 years old and Jay is 15 years old. Now, we took the boys under our care when they were 8 and 11 years old. Before they came with us, they had been in different families and group homes for over a year. It was hard for Luke to understand that they were with us for good and that he had his own bedroom and family. Me and my partner know that he still sometimes has insecurities about it, and a recent one was about him leaving for college. He explained to Luke that even if he was 18 and leaving the house, he would still have a room and a place at home, be it now or in 10 to 25 years, that he would still be our kid at 40 and we will always be here for him. Now, here's the issue. My cousin, who's a 42-year-old female, recently broke up and needed someone somewhere to live for her and her 2 boys. Me and my partner have a house big enough, and we agreed to host them free of charge for 6 months until she gets her bearings back. For the house itself, my partner and I have a kind of master bedroom with our bedroom, a bathroom, and an office. Our boys have their own room and they share a bathroom, and my cousin's boys have the guest room with a bathroom. My cousin has a room on the ground floor. It's not big, but she has the space for a bed, as well as a desk and a wardrobe. Last week, we got the keys for Luke's flat, and we started the process of furnishing it. He will officially move in next week, and we'll start university the week after. This weekend, my cousin asked when Luke's room will be empty, but I told her that it won't be, and that he will only take his clothes, his books, and decorative items. Basically, his room will stay the same, and he will take only what he wanted. She then asked how she will be able to move in the room with all of his stuff still here. I told her that she won't, that it will still be his bedroom. He will still come home on some weekends and holidays. She then complained about the fact that she was living in a storage room, that she was the only one without her own bedroom, and that it was unfair to us to have an empty bedroom in our house and not give it to her. My partner and I were very firm in our decision, but my mom and aunt called and told me that it was a bit unfair of us to not offer proper accommodation for my cousin, and that Luke could do without a room for a few months now that he has a flat for the school year. But I completely disagreed. For me, it's more than a room. It's what it represents. It's his own place for him in our home, and it's something I want him to have for as long as possible. I've been called selfish and that I was coddling him too much over this, so I honestly need an outsider perspective. Am I the jerk here? What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all. Your sons come from very sketchy backgrounds. They were in group homes and other families for a while, and this is the first time they finally felt like they were at home. So for you to tell your son, yes, your room will be there when you come back, that in my opinion is really sweet, and that is the mark of a really good parent. So it's honestly really disrespectful that your cousin would suddenly be like, man, my room is like a storage closet, give me Luke's room. Like, no, we have made our decision, you're not taking it, you're not moving into it, and that's the final word. I don't care if your mom or your aunt or if the Pope comes in there and says you've got to move it. This is your home, so it's your rules. Your cousin has no say over it. And it's honestly kind of rude for her to try and make some kind of demand, even though she has no ownership over the home. I know if I was in her situation, I would just be happy to have a place to live at. So no, you are not the jerk here. Your cousin is being weird, and your extended family is also being weird. Because at the end of the day, you decide who stays where in your home. And in my opinion, no amount of complaining should ever change your decision. My boyfriend humiliated me at prom and then attacked me in my home after I embarrassed him for leaving him at prom. So I decided to get revenge by attacking him with over 1,000 bees. And I've never been in more trouble in my life. Here's what happened. So here's some background information to start things off. I come from a family of sideline beekeepers, so I've been around bees my entire life. I have no problem being around creepy crawlies, and bees tend to be comforting in some kind of way for me, but it isn't like a pet or anything like that, but more like a distraction overall in my life. But anyways, I'm a bit weird because I like bees more than people. My dad sells honey and queen bees as a side business, with his main job being an architect. I started dating a junior athlete in high school about 2 years ago, and he was everything I wanted when I was going through my teen fantasy phase. He was tall, he was blonde, he smelled great, and he was an absolute delight to be around. For the sake of this story, we'll call him Harris. That is not his real name. Now, Harris was a bit of a troubled kid. I knew his parents put pressure on him, but that often led to outbursts at others. Now, since I, his bee-obsessed girlfriend, was there at all times, I was the easiest target to lash out at. Now, I'm not a short girl by any means, but Harris, like I said, was tall. And at the time, I hated to admit it, but I truly was afraid whenever he decided to pick on me. But I mean, these events were so far and few between that I just straight up ignored them because I thought he was amazing. We had some of the best times, and he was someone I could be incredibly close with. But my honeymoon period with him stopped about a year later, which is right about the time when he invited me to senior prom. I was a sophomore at the time, so I was super stoked to go. I picked out a dress and everything, and I was feeling on top of the world. I was a bit on the heavy side back then, but not to the point where it was noticeable unless I took my clothes off. But still, I had a dress on, something that isn't pants. I was so excited. I mean, who cares about your arm fat being out in the open? Well, apparently all of Harris's friends do. I almost forgot that these guys and girls were athletes, and I was absolutely not. As soon as I caught up with them, I found that they were in a totally joking mood, which I thought to myself, okay, that's great. I love jokes. One of his friends said to me, "So Harris really likes you." And I just smiled because I knew this as well. I responded by saying, yeah, and I love him too. Harris and I then began to kiss, and his friend just rolled her eyes and said something about me being weirdly cute. Harris grinned at that comment and took a break from me to talk. He said, oh really? How is she cute? In what kind of way? And what was said next about me absolutely blew my mind, as I was insulted in a way that absolutely devastated me. Harris's friend then looked up and said, she's cute like a baby hippo. Now when she said that, she probably meant this as a joke, but I thought it was a bit unusual. Maybe I was self-conscious or something like that, and I thought that it was a fat joke. So I didn't laugh, and I could feel my face getting hotter and hotter. I had picked up some soda earlier, and I was pretty sure it was heating up in my palms. Harris then said in his ever so suave voice as he wrapped his arm around me, yeah, that's true. His hand then traveled down the side of my dress, and he squeezed my stomach. She is my baby hippo, and I saw all of it. All of it? Excuse me, you mean all of her? I mean, I'm right here. And right about now, I'm regretting even showing up. At this point, all you can hear is laughter. Then their conversation really took off. I mean, it went from 0 to 100 really quick. He spilled the honey and told his friends, all 5 people, about how Harris and myself spent some quality time together, if you know what I mean. He said some off-putting comments about my body and the parts that he wanted to touch. I was trying so hard not to cry, since this could have just been a harmless joke on their part. Needless to say, I wasn't having any of it, so I excused myself, not to go to the bathroom, but to go home. I called my dad to pick me up and to not let Harris's dad know that I was leaving. I wasn't even in the area during spring break. My dad flew me to my brother, who was a year younger than me at the time, out to Pennsylvania to have a vacation. We went to Hershey's chocolate factory and all of that, and I actually had a chance to clear my head. And as far as I can remember, this was the last time my dad was actually pleased with me. When we returned in 10 days, Harris popped in for a visit at a time that he knew my dad wouldn't be home, but my brother was home, playing Minecraft on his PC in his room like he usually does. Now, I thought Harris visited to apologize for the whole baby hippo thing, but honestly, I was grossly mistaken. He ended up hitting me in the gut. I've never been hit before until now, and it was truly horrible. Not only did it hurt like crazy, but it almost made me puke, and it knocked the wind out of me at the same time. He then grabbed me by the shoulders and shouted at me. He said that I shouldn't have left on prom, and how I shouldn't have embarrassed him in front of his friends, and that I should have called him when I was in Pennsylvania. My brother came running down the stairs when he heard all the commotion. I had this urge to bend over and stay bent over, so I couldn't really focus on him. All I know is that he went after Harris, cussing, shouting, and crying. I ran the other way the best I could, trying to breathe first and foremost. It was hard to do anything, or even think straight with this horrible taste in my mouth and nasal cavity, like I'd already thrown up inside my nose or something like that. It was gross, and it was certainly upsetting me. Going for my phone was honestly difficult, since Harris had already found his way away from my brother, begging me not to call the cops. I almost got to the landline too, but Harris snatched it from my hand. He broke the cover, took out the batteries, and then proceeded to beg again. This time he didn't touch me, and I told him to get out. So I ended up having to clean up the house so that my dad wouldn't see any of this. This was going to be my first and last fight with Harris, or so I hoped, but at least he didn't check the landline. My brother was more injured and certainly devastated. He couldn't even ask if I was okay, but I think that he knew that I wasn't, making me want to cry even more. I honestly really looked up to Harris. Now fast forward about 5 hours, and it's 10 p.m. and I'm still seething. We found out that my brother had sprained his wrist, so we rigged up some sort of easy to remove ice thing for his wrist. My dad was a hard man, so I knew he would get upset at first if he saw the mess that we had gotten into. I can't remember what my intention was, whether I was going to tell him about Harris or not, but I knew that he would be back the day after, so I had to exact my revenge right now. So I shut the doors, my windows, and I waited for my brother to go to sleep. And it's right about then that I decided to get to work. I shimmied into the other set of beekeeper clothing, which is the one that my mom would wear. I got the veil, the gloves, the boots, everything. When it comes to bees, you absolutely have to be prepared. Now that night was pretty cold, and it felt very unreal because I was packing thousands of honeybees, moving them around until I got the right number of frames, and all right under my dad's nose. And I was doing this because my plan was to release them on a living human being. We had roughly 30,000 bees per beehive, totaling to about 150 hives. And like I said, it was a side business, and we really needed the honey. I knew at the time that 1,000 or so bee stings could take somebody out, if you know what I mean, and I wasn't planning on going to jail anytime soon, but instead I was just gonna make sure that this hurt like crazy. So I isolated a fair number of bees between 2 frames with a bit of difficulty, and in total there were about 900 of them. Now not all of them them would sting, but I wanted to get back at him for everything. I mean, who punches their baby hippo, right? Once I had my bees in place, I set the single frame in its own hive closer to home. I then called Harris, and I told him that I wanted to work some things out with him. No violence, none of that stuff. I lied through my teeth, telling him that I won't tell my dad and that I was doing all right. He then showed up about 5 minutes later and stepped up to my door. The porch light was the only thing illuminating him, and the rest of the place was dark. And that's when I decided to strike. I removed the frames from the hive. I walked up behind him, beekeeper boots squeaking on the steps, with the frames in my hand. I said to him, "Hi, Harris," and I thought it would sound cool, but I was crying. My voice was broken. But voice breaking was the least of Harris's problems at the moment, as I was holding 2 open frames with almost 1,000 bees. Some of them were flying around, but I was fully protected. But unfortunately, Harris wasn't so protected. I swatted him with one of the frames and thrusted the other one against his mouth, hoping that I could at least have a single bee between his lips. A single bee sting hurts like crazy and will hurt for quite a while. But the thing about bees is that they are part of a true hive mind. If a single bee passes away, all the other bees in the area go into defense mode, stinging at whatever flesh they can find just to push off whatever attacked them. That way they can protect their hive. And the frame I hit Harris with would most likely take out a few of them. The resulting scream was insane. I had never heard him scream before. I almost expected the bees to fly away and hide in some other hive, but no. When bees defend, they really defend. It didn't help that Harris wore short sleeves and had his neck and face exposed, so the bees went for that. Unfortunately for him, none of the bees went inside his mouth like I intended. They were too stupid and wouldn't do that. But instead, they just kept stinging him. I ended up falling down the stairs and scrambling into the dark, looking to get away from him. Looking back though, he was in no position to fight. And sure, I shouldn't have run away, but I did. And I got to watch him try to fight his way through a cloud of bees. Now, when it comes to aftermath, no, he did not pass away. But it did take forever for him to recover, and he was pockmarked by scars. And while I did actually spend some time in jail, I wasn't sentenced. My dad was extremely upset at me for using bees as a weapon, and I am currently in the process of working off that payment. My dad doesn't look at me the same anymore, and I feel really bad about that, and honestly, I wish I'd just gone to him first. But in the end, my ex-boyfriend got exactly what he deserved. That might be the craziest form of revenge I've ever heard in my life. Like, this lady literally threw 1,000 bees at their boyfriend as a form of revenge instead of, I don't know, calling the police. Like, first and foremost, that was awful. Your ex-boyfriend really could have passed away. Like, that could have taken him out completely. And I seriously think that you got very lucky. That guy's gonna have permanent scars for the rest of his life. So it kind of makes sense why you went to jail for a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong, your ex-boyfriend is awful. He was mocking you very clearly behind your back to all of his friends, and he punched you in the stomach. And this is all because you stood him up at prom and supposedly embarrassed him. But it's so backwards. Like, I would have left if I was in your shoes. There is no way I would let somebody make fun of me like that, who I thought was my significant other, and just take that from all of his friends calling me a baby hippo or whatever. Like, that's crazy to me. You did not deserve that, and he had no right to go into your house and attack you like that. As well as your poor little brother, I feel really bad for him as well, because he was probably just trying to defend his sister. But boy, did you escalate this in a way that I don't think anybody could have expected. Like, this is something you would see straight out of like a Stephen King novel. Oh, so my boyfriend hit me and humiliated me in front of his friends? Time to throw 1,000 bees at him. Like, that is seriously a crazy escalation. And in my opinion, I really think you should have just like called the police and reported him. Like, all of this could have been avoided. You wouldn't have some crazy fine and you wouldn't have gone to jail. I don't know, maybe that's just me. I just don't think swinging bees around like a hammer is a really good idea. Even though your ex-boyfriend was an absolute piece of work, and he was more than ready to cash that karma check. So hopefully you're able to move on from this and you're able to pay off the fine or whatever else you need to do. Because this is definitely one of the craziest stories of revenge I've ever heard in my life. And hopefully nothing like this ever happens again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An angry old man storms into the back of my store looking for a manager, enraged that his card isn't working at the gas pump. And I've never been more blown away by someone's entitlement and actions in my life. Here's what happened. Years ago, I worked at the biggest gas station in the state of Connecticut, and I had the job for almost 10 years. So as you can imagine, I have all kinds of stories from my experiences. But the one that I always remember was from this one old man. Now, if you use your credit or debit card at the pump 3 times in 48 hours, it would no longer work at the pump for security reasons, but it would work paperwork inside. And this was just in case someone stole your card and was on a spending spree or something like that. And trust me, it was always old people that would stick their card in unaware it was accepted 3 times in a row and didn't realize the pump was ready because it wouldn't let you select your grade of gas until you picked up the nozzle. And for some reason, this always confused people. Anyways, this guy comes in and he's probably in his 90s and he's walking in looking absolutely enraged. He asked me why his card isn't working, and I attempted to explain this to him, but I always got the same response. But I haven't used it 3 times in 48 hours. So I then have to explain, yes, you inserted it 3 times in a row, and this will lock you out. I then try to segue the conversation away from this guy screaming at me, and I just ask him, how much gas do you want? We can take care of it right now. But he just says, I want it to all fill up. And all these older people always want to fill their tanks, which is fine. So I explained to him that he can leave the card with me, and I can let him fill his tank up. And at this point, he's freaking out because he says he can't walk back and forth due to his handicap. I then try to say, sir, that's not my fault. But he says to me, yes, it is. You work here. He then, of course, asks to talk to the manager. So I tell him that I am the manager, even though I definitely am not. But this old man wasn't taking that for a second. He then storms to the back of the store looking for a manager. My assistant manager was actually stocking the cooler, but thankfully he didn't find him because trust me, my coworker wouldn't have given him even the time of day. I then yell out, sir, you shouldn't be walking back and forth like this if you're handicapped. And when I said that, this guy got so angry he didn't even know what to do with himself. He ended up leaving after totally losing it. I don't even remember what he said. He was just so angry. And out of the hundreds of thousands of customers I rang out, I remember him the most for some reason. Now, I would have felt bad for this guy. I really would have, because I could tell that he was having a difficult time walking, but that guy was a jerk. So honestly, any sympathy went straight out the window. Wow, I can't imagine working the front desk at some kind of store, whether it's a gas station or some kind of retail job, and then have some guy literally storm into the back of your store looking for a manager all over their card not working at the pump. Like seriously, this guy needs to take a break. He needs to take a breather and just calm down. He can literally still fill up his tank. Like I know if I was in his shoes, I would have been like, go ahead and fill up your tank and then honk the horn of your car and I'll bring your card out to you or something like that. And I would even bring the receipt out so he doesn't think I'm trying to steal money from him. So yeah, I don't blame you for not having sympathy for this guy because I personally know people just like this old man who have trouble walking and can't get around as easily as they used to. But they don't act like this in the slightest. In fact, they're quite pleasant to be around and they don't complain about the limitations they have. So overall, this is definitely not your fault. And that old man was being a massive jerk. My entitled manager never does anything correctly at our job and is so lazy and condescending. So I decide to maliciously comply when he tells me to do one of the easiest jobs he has on his desk. And as a result of me purposefully doing it wrong, my manager got in trouble and the owner of our company never let him ever live it down. Here's what happened. So a few years ago, I worked at an exotic car dealership. We were the largest in the world for our brand, which will remain nameless for this post. And the exotic car side was run by one of the owners, a manager who we will call Jim, as well as 2 others my age who did most of the grunt work with me. Jim also is not his real name. We sold cars in all 50 US states and would ship them wherever they needed to go. We all worked on every deal and were paid off the profit of the dealership, not individual sales. Now, Jim was a major kiss up to the owner who oversaw our department. He wasn't good at his job, but he was good at playing the game needed to stay on the owner's good side. He treated myself and the younger guys like absolute garbage and tried to do as little work as humanly possible. He was openly racist, he would make horrible comments about women, and knew literally nothing about the cars that we sold or their main competition. Now, Jim's main responsibility was to send out all paperwork to customers and make sure that everything was set up so that we could release the car. A big part of this was making sure the car was registered before shipping it out if they financed through the manufacturer's financial arm. And most people did that just for the slight discount. This often meant sending all registration paperwork to the customer to go register it locally. And Jim was the only one allowed to do this, as our manager had inherent distrust for the younger guys, even though we genuinely did great work. I mean, you don't get to #1 in the world for your brand if we weren't doing a good job in some kind of way. Well, when the owner wasn't there, Jim would often do nothing all day and then send some paperwork right before the end of the day. And on that day, things came to a head. He spent the morning shopping for pellet smokers and a cruise for his family to go on, and kept interrupting me to show me the different options he was looking at. Meanwhile, I was handling 2 in-person deliveries, as well as dealing with the entire showroom traffic. Well, long story short, the end of the day rolls around and he didn't get the paperwork sent out, so he looked at me and told me to do it. But I explained that the owner made it clear that he's the only one allowed to send the paperwork out for registration, but he threw a fit and demanded that I throw the paperwork out. So that's exactly what I did. Now the title needs to be filled out with the information from the financing company, and if you don't do that, they'll have no claim to that car, and the registration won't match. So I sent the blank title out to the customer, knowing that this meant they couldn't just sign it and register it like they were planning to do in the first place. Well, the customer noticed and asked my manager why he left the lien holder off the title, but forwarded this email to our entire department. The owner saw this and freaked out, shouting at my manager, saying, "How could you mess this up? It was so simple," which then led to my manager having to admit that he interrupted my actual work to make me send it out while not clarifying that he hadn't even filled out the title yet and that I had to do that. They then sent an overnight envelope to the customer to send it back to us. Then we had to overnight it again once we filled it out. Jim then got an earful from the owner, and the owner never let him live it down. Eventually, I quit and moved into software sales, and honestly, I'll never work in a dealership ever again. Yeah, that Jim guy's a piece of work. I can't stand dealing with managers who are over me, who not only don't do their job, but also don't even make an effort to learn how to do the things around them. They're only in that position because they played the game and not because they're skilled at their job. And in my opinion, if you're gonna be a manager, you need to know what you're doing. You need to know the ins and outs of your department and not just sit around on your phone or on the computer looking up cruises you can go on. Like, this Jim guy absolutely had it coming. And the fact that you were able to maliciously comply and get this guy back is honestly hilarious, because people like this absolutely deserve to be put in their place. Because at the end of the day, I really do think people like this are just leeches on society, and they really need that kick in the pants to either get to work or get out of the way. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for ignoring a Karen who was getting angry at me vacuuming while I was at work? Here's what happened. So for a bit of background information, this is my first job, and I've been working at this gym for about 2 months. I came into work at about 3:25 like usual. I start unlocking doors, and at this point, I'm the only one there. So I unlock all the doors and start the laundry like I'm supposed to, and then I start up the computer. And by then, it's about 3:30, so it's right about the time that I should start working. By then, an older woman had come in and started on the treadmill. I knew that since we were open 24/7, there would be people most days, and I just had to try and work around them. So I grab the vacuum out of storage, and I plug it into the wall by the towels, and I start vacuuming. I'd gotten no further than 2 minutes in when I hear the lady on the treadmill start shouting. So I turn off the vacuum and I ask her what's wrong. She continues shouting and says, "Why are you doing that while I'm here?" I calmly tell her, "Ma'am, this is my job." She then interrupts me and starts shouting, "I don't care. You can clean when you guys close." Now, I stay calm and I tell her that we are open 24/7 and that we never close, and also that I have to do this or I don't get paid. Meanwhile, this lady is still shouting at me, "I doubt you even work here. Where's the employee?" Now, for context, I'm 5 foot tall, so I knew this was coming. I calmly tell her, "Ma'am, I'm an employee here and I work until 6:30 today." She then yells at me to just vacuum when she leaves and tells me to do something quieter until then. But I tell her that without vacuuming, I can't do anything else that's mandatory for the day. And by now, she's done listening to me, so I just start vacuuming again. I can hear her shouting at me to stop, but I've already been talking to her for an hour by now, so I just ignored it, knowing that I'm gonna be here past 6:30 working anyways. So honestly, am I the jerk for doing my job and vacuuming while some entitled Karen was at our gym? No, you are not the jerk here. That lady was being weird for literally no reason. And if part of doing your job is like housekeeping and vacuuming and cleaning up or stuff like that, then you just have to do it. And you know what? You cleaning and taking care of the place does not take away from her ability to work out and get in shape. Like, seriously, why does she care? Like, if you don't like the noise of other people around you, then maybe go buy some earbuds or something like that and use that to listen to music. Like, that Karen was being completely obnoxious. And honestly, in my opinion, I don't think you did anything wrong. My entitled coworker tries to falsely claim that I've been stealing from the store, but I refuse to take that sitting down. So I decided to get some revenge. And as a result, I exposed this entitled coworker for being the actual thief in this scenario. And as a result, he ended up spending 6 years in jail. And I've never been happier to expose somebody in my life. Here's what happened. Now, before I go any further, every name in this story is fake. So I work as a computer technician now, but when I was in college, I worked part-time at a well-known chain cafe. And for the sake of the story, we'll call this place Seattle Seattle's finest. Other than babysitting or odd one-off under-the-table work, helping at friends' booths at Renaissance fairs or stuff like that, this honestly was my first job. My manager, Eliza, had aspirations for rising in the company at a corporate level, so she was obsessed about making our store the absolute best. At the same time, though, she wasn't an especially effective manager at the store level. She didn't really know how to make all the drinks and had to constantly refer to the recipe cards, even though she was supposed to be an expert on everything. She also didn't really care to learn, which meant that during a busy rush, she could never step in and help us out in making drink orders. Instead, she would just hide in the back office near the kitchen. However, she had a college degree, and our company's policy, at least at the time, was that only college degree holders could be the full manager of the store. She left the day-to-day running of the store to a man by the name of Steven, the lead shift supervisor who had been working at that location for nearly 25 years. I mean, he's worked here since he was 16 years old. He claims that the only reason he's not a manager is because he doesn't have a college degree, and he never got tired of reminding all the workers that this store would go down the drain if he wasn't around. Steven didn't really have much to do other than delegate others to do things and make sure that orders were sent out to suppliers and to sign those orders in when they arrived. Our store followed standard company practice, and so a fixed amount of supplies was usually ordered in every day, with only slight variations to account for specific store needs. Now, Steven also wrote the schedule every week. When I was hired on, Eliza was the one who interviewed me, and she assured me that I would get at least 20 hours a week with 4-hour shifts, and I would only work Saturdays on the weekend and not Sundays. Now, during my 2-week training period, she kept her word. I would hover right around 18 to 22 hours a week, and my hours would basically be about the same. But after that, once I was fully trained, she passed me over to Steven. And it's right about at this point that the nightmare involving Steven really began, as this guy started to act shady in a way that I honestly didn't expect. Steven followed Eliza's pattern for a week or so, but soon he began trying to schedule me in the mornings, which I couldn't do because of school. He'd pretend to get angry and really disappointed and basically talk down to me in the process. He would say, "In my 25 years with the company, one of the first things you learn is to be a team player." Well, I thought that was great, but I still couldn't work in the mornings. So he just grumbled and said, "I'll have to talk to Eliza to see what we have to do about you." Now, she would only occasionally show up to the store. Usually she was there at about mid-morning and left well before closing. Steven would always open the store and would constantly brag about opening the store up for more than 20 years. Steven would try to suck up to customers and at the same time condescend us in front of them. He would say to them, "Forgive her, she's new. I mean, you see what I have to work with? They're just basic recruits." Sometimes he would literally just outright call us idiots if we couldn't clean things up fast enough, or if we were slow in making drinks. Like, he'd be hanging out in the back counting boxes. Meanwhile, it's 12 o'clock on a Saturday, and I'm running the register and making all the drinks, plus our line is 10 people deep, with him sending my other worker off to lunch and him refusing to try and help me out. He would tell me that I need to have my baptism by fire. I mean, seriously, he took himself way too seriously. He also thought that he was special because he spoke fluent Spanish. Since he worked in the morning, a lot of people who had early morning jobs would come in, and many of them spoke Spanish only, so he somehow thought it was his specialty that he could communicate with them. Well, my father is from Spain, and I happen to speak fluent Spanish myself as well. So one Saturday when I opened the store with him, I started speaking Spanish to one of the customers, and the customer complimented me on how well I spoke the language. And when they said that, it looked like Steven was going to absolutely take me out. Whenever customers would come in who spoke Spanish, rather than let me communicate with them, Steven would suddenly get off of his butt and say something like, "Oh, it's okay, I'll handle this." As time went on, Steven would only schedule me for 8 hours a week, like closing Friday night and opening Saturday morning. I thought to myself, whatever, I'll just start applying for other jobs, and I won't tell him that I'm doing that on the side. Now, I knew that he was giving all of the hours to his favorites. Usually, it was the young girl who tried to flirt with him. And I know this because he tried the same thing with me at first. He said that he could give me more hours, but apparently I had to play ball. Now, this was nothing that I could actually prove in court, but he was hinting that if I go out with him, he would give me more hours. But honestly, no thanks, man. You're gross and you're married. Well, Eliza was up for promotion for district manager, which meant that she would oversee 5 or 6 of the coffee shops instead of just one. However, in a whole team meeting one special Sunday, she said that our store consistently was losing product. She warned us to stop giving discounts to friends, to stop giving away free cookies or snacks to friends, stuff like that. She also said that if we planned to have some of the pastries for ourselves, that we had to make sure to write it down on the store use board. And just as a side note, we were allowed a certain amount of free products depending on the hours that we worked. Now, at least during the hours that I worked at this store, I never witnessed anyone giving away any free products, and I certainly wasn't using it for myself. I mean, no one was giving any of that stuff away. That is, with the obvious exception of Steven. Steven got a bonus every time the store use board was below a certain threshold, and he would always accuse us of stealing or giving away things. In fact, he said so at the meeting. He said, "This shrinkage is caused by these rookies who think that a company runs on fees, but it's a business based on cold, hard money, and we're bleeding it out when we steal products or give it away." Meanwhile, I always noticed Steven giving free discounts to certain customers, as well as constantly giving things away. One of those situations where it's a rule you have to follow, but it's not one that he has to follow. And another worker actually asked him about it, and he actually said that managers had certain privileges. But seriously, dude, you're not a manager. You make $3 more an hour than me, and you've spent your entire life here. He also resented the fact that most of us who worked in the store were college students who would eventually move on someday to something hopefully more financially profitable. Steven would do this working class hero bit where he would talk about how college people were snobs, that they didn't know how to do real work, and that they were just lazy and privileged. He also mocked me for majoring in computing as a female and accused me of just trying to get my MRS degree. And he acted like he was kidding, but honestly, he was just being really slimy. Then he would go right back to his same speech about how business people's whole day would collapse without people like him, and that he's starting their day off correctly by giving them coffee. He would say stuff like, "I'm as indispensable to a large corporation as a CEO." Now, meanwhile, we're all thinking, okay, calm down, Steven. You're a shift supervisor at a suburban coffee shop, and you wear an apron with your name embroidered on it. It's not like you're curing cancer, buddy. Anyways, Eliza's promotion depended on our store reducing its shrinkage. And on a date a few days from our Sunday meeting, company bigwigs would come to the store and check out how well Eliza ran things. So we were told to look sharp. The bigwigs would be in the dining room chatting with Eliza, while the rest of us who were scheduled that day tried to look our best. Steven didn't really have any incentive to make Eliza look good, because as long as he kept overall shrinkage beneath a certain number, he would get his stupid bonus. But that threshold was still too high for Eliza to get her promotion. And also, it's not like Steven would become the next manager if Eliza got promoted. The company would simply get a new manager as an outside hire. Informally, we would call Steven the assistant manager, but the company did not officially recognize him in this capacity. Now, since he was a long-time worker and worked full-time, he did get health benefits and a 2-week vacation. The rest of us lowly part-timers just got a store discount and some free food or drink while working. We got paid every 2 weeks, but we got tips every single week. If you've never worked at a coffee shop like Seattle's Finest or anything like that, customers would throw money into a jar at the register if they felt like being generous. The tips would be emptied out every night, and eventually at the end of the week, all the money would be parceled out to all the workers, depending on the hours that they worked. Since I only worked a few hours, my tips were small, but you know what? At least it paid for my laundry. Now, my school starts a couple of hours after the store opens, and since I wasn't burning too much energy working, I would get up nice and early every day. The store was close to my apartment after all, and I always walked there. It was the time of year where the moon was still out early in the morning, and I decided that I'd walk to the store to get my tips for that week. I approached the store from the alley entrance, but I intended to enter through the front. The store policy was that you could only enter the back way if you were scheduled to work. As usual, at that hour, our daily supply truck was pulling out of the alley, and there was a huge stack of daily supplies in crates outside the back door. Steven propped open the back door with a trash can and was carrying one crate in at a time into the store's back room. My first instinct was to try and help him out, but then I remembered that I wasn't being paid. And besides that, Steven was a complete jerk. I was fascinated watching him as he worked, because usually he was such a lazy jerk. I was hidden just out of sight by the cars and the trees, so there was no way that he could see me. He stopped working, but there was still a crate left at the back door. It was filled with what looked to be croissants and random boxes of granola bars. In addition to coffee and pastries, our store also sold third-party nutrition bars, the kind where you can buy a box of 6 for like $4 at the grocery store, but we would charge you $2.99 for each one. He was talking on a cell phone, and only a minute or two later, a beat-up car pulls into the alleyway. The driver pops the trunk, and Steven puts the crate crate into the car, and the car speeds off. Steven then goes back into the store. And when I saw that, I was honestly completely shocked. At first, I tried to rationalize what I had seen. Maybe it was just a work-related thing that I didn't understand because I wasn't a shift supervisor or something like that. Maybe the person in the car was from another store, and our store was supposed to send those items to them. Either way, I decided to forget my tips for the time being and just walk back home. By the time I got there, I realized that it was most likely that Steven was just a thief. I went to school and I forgot about it for a few hours, but every now and then my memory would come back to what I saw. So the next morning I wake up and I made sure I had my cell phone ready. I waited outside really early in the morning, even before the supply truck came in. When it did come in, sure enough, Steven did the same song and dance as the day before. He left one crate outside, coordinated with his accomplice on his phone, the same car arrived, and it pulled away after Steven packed its trunk with stolen goodies. Now, I thought I was being really slick in recording the scene, but later when I reviewed what I had, it was way too dark and unclear of what was going on. And if I tried to get a closer look and try to get a better picture where there's more light, Steven would see me and my cover would be blown. So anyways, I actually worked that day because it was a Saturday, and Steven was his usual jerk self. But hearing him banter with customers, it reminded me of other pieces of other conversations that I overheard from him over the past few weeks. Steven had a side business, or at least his wife did, and they would sell snacks outside of clubs or sporting events. I put two and two together, and I realized that if Steven even stole just one crate and sold all of its items at a massive discount, he would still make a pretty penny, and all of it would be complete profit. And he had stolen a crate 2 days in a row. I mean, who knew how many crates he had stolen in the past? I realized that if I told Eliza, she would not believe me, and Steven would completely deny it. So my only option was to try and catch him red-handed. The approach I had been making to the alley was simply too far away to record him without being observed, but I also saw that there was an apartment complex on the other side of the alley. If I could somehow get into that apartment complex, all I'd have to do is quietly hold my phone over the brick wall, and it would be close enough to record him perfectly. And you know what? That's exactly what I did. Staking out Steven stealing became my morning ritual for a week. Out of 4 days, he stole a crate 3 times, and each time I had him recorded. And I wasn't scheduled to come in until an afternoon the next week. Now, all I needed to do was show Eliza my phone, and I would finally nail this jerk. Unfortunately, she wouldn't be in the store for a while either. But then it hit me. I remembered that the big company meeting regarding Eliza's promotion was coming up that Monday afternoon, just a couple days later. I wasn't scheduled to work, but I knew I could talk my way into the back room with some kind of excuse, like I needed my paycheck or something like that. Our back room has a computer where we clock in and out. It's just one window on the screen, and if you click out of it, you have access to the rest of the company's functions. One thing the company always has running in the background is what we call Store TV. It was basically just a series of short infomercials about how wonderful Seattle's finest coffee was, how our beans are from plantations where workers are treated humanely, how we donate to underprivileged communities, offer funding to women in STEM, and stuff like that. The file was stored as a WMV file, and the store just played it on a continuous loop. Every so often, Eliza would obtain a new set of infomercials, and we would then loop those out. Our store had one big screen mounted from the ceiling, which faced out into the store away from the registers. My plan was to upload my video of Steven stealing onto the store computer itself. I had the files, which I combined at home into one big file of 3 different occasions, where you could clearly see his face and the face of the woman driving the car, who I'm assuming is his wife, while also showcasing how they're clearly stealing product from the store. Eliza and the big bosses were already there at the restaurant, so the sensible thing for me to do would be to just interrupt Eliza and just blatantly hold up my cell phone and show her the video. But you know what? I love a bit of drama, and Steven absolutely had this coming. So I see Eliza with her colleague sitting at a table near the registers, and this is also where Steven is standing with that awful grin on his face, sucking up to the people in front of him. I mean, honestly, the store really wasn't that crowded. Eliza sees me when I come in, and she then says to all of us, as if to project that she does love her staff, "Oh, everyone, here's our newest employee. She's going to college for computing." And after she said that, it was followed by a bunch of nods and verbal agreements, as if anyone was actually even caring about what my major was. I smile and I mouth the words that I'm just here for the tips, with Eliza saying, "Oh, of course, no problem." And Steven at this point looks like he just wants to slap me. But you know what? That's too bad. I'm going into the back room whether you like it it or not. Now, our tips are placed in little baggies, labeled with the amount in our cubbies in the back room, and we have an honor system of not grabbing anyone else's tips. I grabbed my tips, which was only $11.50, so it wasn't that bad to be completely honest, but then I go straight for the computer. I have my phone's data cable, and I plug it into the USB port of the store computer. I upload the file as planned. I then unclick the looping channel for Seattle's Finest, and I switch it to Steven the Thief, and I set the video on continuous loop. I come out into the restaurant, and as usual, no one really cares about the TV, and so I go to Steven and I order a hot latte. Now, Steven looks like he wants to throw me through a window, but he still has that awful grin on his face, literally only because the bosses are there. But he doesn't know that just a few feet above his head, there is a continuous loop of him and his wife stealing products in the alley every morning. I had made sure to include a time and date stamp on the videos when editing. He already had some hot milk ready, and all he had to do was pull 2 espresso shots, so I had my drink in about 30 seconds. I pulled out my wallet, but uncharacteristically, he smiled at me and waved me off. Eliza saw me and nodded in approval. Then I sat at a table not far from where the bosses were sitting. Above Steven's head, his video was playing silently. And finally, I got the payoff that I waited for. One of the bosses said, "Say, Eliza, isn't that our company video of our donations to minority scholarships? What is that?" Eliza, as well as everybody else, looks at the video. And right about then, everybody's mouths were hanging open. The only person still grinning like a complete moron was Steven, standing there completely oblivious. Finally, Eliza stands up and says, "Steven, can you explain what's going on here, please?" Steven looks at the video and looked like he was going to run out of the room like Usain Bolt. He didn't do or say anything other than run into the back room. Seconds later, the video stopped, and a few minutes later, it began playing again. And I did that because I knew Steven would try something weird. What I did was I deleted the correct video and made a duplicate of the videos I made and renamed it as if it was the store's looping channel. Everyone in the dining room was once again treated to a loop of Steven and his wife stealing an entire crate of designer granola bars and pastries repeatedly. One of the big bosses said, "Eliza, let's close the store right now. Young lady, I'm sorry, but it looks like you have to go." And honestly, who was I to argue? I walked home with $11.50, but it felt like $1,000,000. A couple days later, I get a call from corporate thanking me for the information about Steven. And unfortunately, they couldn't give me any details about what happened, as this now had become a police matter. But as a thank you, I received $200 in store credit. Fast forward to a few days later, and I come in to find neither Eliza or Steven at the restaurant. And one of my coworkers told me that she heard that Steven was arrested for theft, both he and his wife. Eliza ended up getting her promotion because it was proven that the only reason her store had moderately high shrinkage was because Steven was literally stealing from the store. However, because she was supposed to be keeping a close eye on Steven, she's being watched very carefully to ensure that she's actually a good employee. And you know what? That's fair. She wasn't a thief, but she should have been keeping a closer eye on her store. I mean, if she's gonna get a full-time salary, but only show up for a few hours, that in my opinion is so unacceptable. As for me, the new manager got me my final check because I quit. I went and applied for a job on campus at my school's off-brand coffee shop. It was basically the same job, a few jerks here or there, but I did end up making $1 more an hour as a result. As time went on, I graduated school. I did eventually learn that Steven was not only stealing product, but also he was embezzling tips and tampering with the time clock to reduce people's hours and give himself more. Steven ended up going to jail for 6 years, but his wife got a suspended sentence because they had 2 children under the age of 13. Now, I learned this because the company I work for actually did tech service for Seattle's Finest corporate office, which is exactly where Eliza works now. She remembered me, and over the finest coffee in all of Seattle, she told me the whole story of how Steven was eventually taken down. Wow, that is awesome. First off, let's double down about something. This Steven guy was a complete creep. He was basically saying, if you spend time with me on a date, I'll give you more hours. That is so sketchy and so messed up. So it honestly doesn't surprise me that this guy was not only stealing products, but also embezzling tips and tampering time clocks to give himself more hours. Like seriously, what was this guy thinking? I mean, this guy probably stole like thousands of dollars worth of product. There's no way this was the first time he ever did this. And on top of that, he had the audacity to try and blame you and your coworkers. Like, I'm sorry, why would the part-time employee have any time to try and steal from the store? And if there really is some kind of shrinkage in sales, you're not gonna find that in taking like the occasional donut outside the display. Like seriously, come on, that's so ridiculous. So honestly, good for the original poster for taking this guy down, because this guy was a complete jerk, and he absolutely deserved to get taken down. An entitled Kevin and Karen couple demand that I remove my prosthetic because they're disturbed by it and claim that it's inappropriate to have on in a children's hospital. And I've honestly never been more offended by somebody's remarks in my life. Here's what happened. So for a bit of background, I'm a 24-year-old male and I'm half deaf on my left side due to a birth defect. I also have a misshaped ear due to a combination of birth defects as well as because of surgeries to repair it. When I got a bit older, I started wearing a prosthetic ear on that side to cover it up. It wasn't perfect, but it looked better than what I originally had. Unfortunately though, these types of prosthetics don't last forever, and they have to be replaced every so often as the colors begin to fade and it tears around the edges. And this is one of those prosthetics that is removable. I was due for a new one and was just waiting on my insurance to approve it before the prosthetist was going to send it to me. So anyways, I was working in a pediatric emergency room at the time and had just received the order to perform an EKG on a roughly 8 to 10-year-old patient. When I walked into the room and began to introduce myself to the family, namely the mom and the dad and the patient, the mother looked up at me and made a gasping sound. I was taken aback and asked her what was wrong. She told me, "Your ear is really freaking me out. Is this supposed to be some kind of Halloween costume or something like that? It really seems inappropriate for a children's hospital." Now, mind you, it was only October 2nd or October 3rd, but I explained to her that I have a disability for which I have to wear a prosthetic. She then demanded and said to me, "You need to take it off because it's making me uncomfortable." After she said that, I politely declined because it's held on by medical glue and that is really not easy to take off. I proceeded to do my job and perform the EKG, but throughout the entire procedure, the father decided to repeatedly probe me for personal information. He would ask me things like, "Are you sure you're qualified to do this? How long did you go to school before this job?" And stuff like that. Now, I answered his questions, but could very obviously tell that he was insinuating that I was mentally disabled and that I shouldn't be working in this field. I finished the procedure as quickly as I could and then I left, not saying anything to the parents, but I did wish the child well. I gave the report to the nurse and asked her not to call me for this patient unless they absolutely needed to. I kept my mouth shut at the time, but in retrospect, I wish I had spoken up for myself more. Because honestly, some people just have no respect for those with disabilities. Wow, the mom and dad in that story were awful. Like seriously, why can't they just mind their own business? First and foremost, like who in their right mind would audibly gasp when they see something that doesn't look right? Like does she do that when she sees someone with like a fake leg or a fake arm? Like come on lady, you can't be that weird, can you? And the fact that she was trying to demand that this person take it off, like seriously, that medical glue is very strong. It's not gonna come off very easily, and it's probably gonna be hard if he just rips it off. Like why can't people just mind their own business and keep their comments to themselves? She really tried to sit there and be like, "Oh my gosh, this is bad for a children's hospital," and yet she's the only one who even complained about it in the first place. And then for the dad to try and sit there and be like, "Well, how long have you been doing this? Do you even know what you're doing?" Like honestly, what a dumb question, especially with their kid just getting an EKG. It's not like this guy was performing surgery or something like that. Like calm down. But honestly, this is just so awful, and I'm so sorry to the original poster for dealing with this, because you know what? You worked hard to get through school to get in the position that you're in, and the last thing you need are a bunch of entitled parents telling you that you're not capable, all because of a disability. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for ruining a wedding by unexpectedly soiling myself? Here's what happened. So my friend Sarah was getting married and I was lucky enough to be in her wedding party. I wasn't the maid of honor, but I was one of the bridesmaids. She had an outdoor wedding that had limited bathroom availability. Obviously, because it was outdoors, she rented 4 very high quality porta potties that you might see at a sophisticated outdoors event like tennis or polo. There were 2 for women and 2 for men, and the wedding in total was about 200 people. Now, I should also mention that due to some health problems, I started taking a medication that has the possible side effect of going to the bathroom and doing a number 3, if you know what I mean. When you look up medicines which have a million side effects, you might tend to just think that, well, these medicines just have to say that you might get this. But it's one of those situations where either way, despite whatever side effects might come along, I still need to take the medication. Now, I didn't think to mention this to anyone for a number of reasons. For starters, the medicine side effects vary depending on what it is, so who knows what could happen. But also, how on earth would I explain this to her? Like, what am I actually gonna say to her before the wedding? Am I really gonna have to explain that I'm taking this medication and that it might have side effects in general? I mean, I've never struggled with IBS or anything like that in the past, so instead I just didn't say anything. So anyways, it's a little while before the ceremony is about to start, and I'm pulled into a million directions helping out, and I start to feel a bit of a stomach ache. And then we all get shuffled up to the front without any warning. But I think to myself, whatever, I'm at the wedding. I can't go run out for some Tums, I mean, it'll be fine. Eventually, the music starts to play and everything is in place. All of the sudden, I feel a deep pain in my bowels. For 20 seconds, I'm just standing there thinking, do I really have to go? What do I do? Is this seriously happening? I was literally just trying to process the situation while remaining as composed as possible. But it didn't matter because in that very moment, it happened. Now, I'm not going to go into detail here because it was embarrassing and traumatizing, but needless to say, I definitely excused myself. And I think you have a good idea of what just happened. After dealing with the whole situation, I was there standing outside the bathroom, not sure what to do next. I had assumed the ceremony had continued to go on, but do I even go back? I mean, there's no way, right? They're in the middle of their vows, and here comes the girl who just went to the bathroom in her pants. So I waited a while as not to interrupt anything. Two of the other bridesmaids found me crying eventually and told me that Sarah was upset and said that I should leave. And so, in my shame, I did just that. Now, this happened over the weekend, and it's now Tuesday night. I did send an apology text to Sarah, but I haven't heard anything from her or anyone else in the wedding party. But honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? First and foremost, I don't think you're the jerk at all. This was a freak accident, and it's not something that you planned on. No one goes to a wedding or goes anywhere for that matter and plans on having that happen. So personally, I think the anger and the blame from the bride is being completely misplaced. Like, sure, there was some kind of interruption when it came to your wedding, but honestly, why would you not want to be like, hey, are you okay? Like, that's what I would do if I was in that situation. I would want to check up on my friend and make sure they're okay. And I like the fact that you decided to stay out and stay out of the ceremony. It really was for the best considering what just happened. Do they really want you lurking around the corner, coming back in, smelling awful and being covered in who knows what? Like, I think that would have made the situation a lot worse. Now, I think there is a side of this where you should have been more prepared and you should have taken the proper steps to be ready for that hour period when she was getting married, but I think overall this was very unpredictable. This has never happened before, and it's not like you did it on purpose. So I'm gonna say that you are not the jerk in this situation. But what do you think? Leave a comment. How would you react if you were in this situation? Let us know in the comments down below. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for getting upset after my mom misplaced and threw away my cosplay items? Here's what happened. So I am currently a first-year senior high school student, and I love cosplay in general. I promised my classmates that I would show them in person my favorite casual cosplay of a formal attire with many handcrafted accessories. By the day I prepared everything in my bag, my mom decided to clean my room, which is fair to an extent, it was a mess, and told me to leave it all to her. But here's the thing, I never gave her permission to touch anything from my bags filled with cosplay items. The next day, I checked my bag, only to find out that all of my cosplay items were completely missing. Specifically, a blue custom crafted flower brooch attached to a DIY cape that I attached to a vest and a blue armband I pinned together. I asked my mom if she misplaced it, and she then just told me to look around the house. But when I did, I found nothing. I asked her again, and despite the fact that I hate bothering people, she got irritated and said, "Stop going to the past and change your life." But like, excuse me, are you kidding? This is only a piece of cosplay that I personally crafted and cherished. What does my past have to do with any of this? She then goes on to explain about how my so-called counselors are saying that I should. But what the actual crap does the counselors have to do with my cosplay? I know I'm going through depression and anxiety, but what does it have to do with something that cheers me up and lets me cope with stress? Cosplay has been my most treasured hobby, and hearing that is just BS. This is also the third time she lost my cosplay items, and it's difficult to replicate something I just crafted out of a very specific artificial blue flower. It also was my pride and joy. The fact that she only treated it like a stain of the past and just wanted to throw it away so that I could change was honestly so offensive. What am I supposed to change here? This is who I am, and this is what makes me happy. It's not like what I'm doing is hurting anybody or anything like that. Not only that, she also misplaced the personally written letters by my best friend, which I always kept, by the way, because of how special of a friend he is. But she acts as if it's just some kind of garbage. The fact that she has the audacity to pretend that she even cares is honestly just so disgusting. Like, I literally placed them in a bag, not just any bag but my bag, which means that it's my possession. I never even gave her permission to rummage through my items. And then what? She used her role as a mother to make it valid? I mean, honestly, what do you guys think? Am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all. I don't know about you, but I could never do cosplay. And I'm not talking about dressing up in a costume that I rented from somebody. I'm talking about making the costume myself out of raw materials that I put together. That would be unbelievably difficult and I wouldn't know where to begin. I have friends who do cosplay themselves and they make their own items and they make their own gear and dresses and pants and all that stuff. And just from the process alone that they've described, it takes a lot of energy and a lot of time to do this correctly and to do it in such a way where it's not going to fall apart when you go to a convention or some kind of event. Like, this is something that you absolutely should and can take seriously. It's not just playing dress up. This is cosplay. There's a deeper meaning here and a personal connection to the piece that you're making. So when it comes to the original poster getting upset at their mom, I don't blame you for a second. She was completely out of line to go through your stuff like that and to throw away stuff that she's probably seen you put together. Like, that is honestly so disrespectful and I'm so sorry you have to deal with that. And sure, you put it in your bag, but maybe it's time to put it in something a little bit more secure. Like, maybe there's a store you can go to get a chest or some kind of box that can be specifically labeled, hey, this is cosplay stuff, do not touch. And then let her know, hey, I'm gonna keep all my cosplay in this box. If you ever clean my room again in the future, don't go in this box. I wanna keep everything in there. And sure, I'm sure you're probably doing that already. You probably have explained this to her many times, but maybe doubling down and redoubling your efforts to protect the things that are important to you will hopefully get through your mother's thick skull that yes, this is important to you, and no, this is not the cause of my depression. If anything, like you described it, this brings you happiness. Like, this hobby is completely harmless and there's no reason you shouldn't be doing it. I mean, if I was a parent, I would definitely feel that way towards my kids doing anything. Oh, they're not hurting anybody and they're enjoying the activity they're doing? Yeah, go ahead and keep doing it. Like, it's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So no, you are not the jerk in this situation. You didn't do anything wrong. Your mom is incredibly rude and unbelievably toxic for throwing your stuff away, and hopefully in the future that never happens again. My entitled mother demands that I do her special effects makeup for every single Halloween, all without properly paying me. And at this point, I'm so annoyed, and I now don't know what to do. So almost 5 to 6 years ago, I discovered my love and talent in special effects and Halloween makeup. This includes homemade latex wounds, airbrushing, the works. My mom's birthday happens to be October 31st, so it's her tradition to have me do her and my stepdad's makeup usually the weekend of or right before Halloween, and this depends on when the holiday falls in. And they want me to do this so that they can go to a really cool small tourist town that we all love for the day and walk around and take pictures. I have always agreed happily and enjoyed doing this little tradition, that is until a few years ago. They don't pay me, but they have bought me supplies before as a payment. I also get free labor on any car work because my stepdad is a mechanic. Now, last year for my mom's 50th birthday, we rented an Airbnb so that I could do all of her friends' makeup as well as my own and my wife's, which took me about 6 to 7 hours. Altogether, I did 7 people's makeup. Her friends paid me but did not pay me my hourly rate. And overall, I made about $30, but my hourly rate is $80 an hour. And yes, my mom does know this. Basically, she called it her birthday gift, and the money I did make was just tips from her friends because they wanted to give me something. We went to the tourist town and only stayed for a few hours while also having dinner and then walked around for a little bit. But everyone got tired really early into the night and went back to the Airbnb. So basically, I feel like I did 7 hours of work for only a few hours of fun. So that definitely really annoyed me. Last year, I also had to turn down a big Halloween party and also opportunities to do friends and some acquaintances makeup, all because of my mom's demands. Now, I say demands because it was implied, and I would get nothing but a tongue lashing if I didn't do this for her. And honestly, I was just really bummed about it. But it was my mom's 50th birthday, so I did want to spend it with her. This year early on, I decided I am not going to do it again. I decided I'm going to do my own Halloween party and do my friend's makeup and actually get paid for it for the first time in 6 years. This year, the parties will be happening on October 28th. My mom just texted me an Airbnb listing and asked if my wife and I wanted to join them again this year on the 28th. I told her that I most likely won't be going because I want an opportunity to go to my own Halloween party. She just replied by typing the letter K, which I know is her annoyed response for not getting her way. She acts petty and passive-aggressive like that every single time I don't do exactly what she wants me to do for her. I've never been able to set any healthy boundaries with my mom. It always needs to be her way, or else she's gonna get upset and annoyed and will usually start messaging me walls of texts telling me that I really hurt her feelings and that she doesn't understand why I do certain things. It honestly drives me absolutely insane. Does anyone else deal with this? Like, how do you set boundaries that they finally respect? Also, should I feel obligated to give up my Halloween just because I get free labor from my stepdad? I am just worried that my mom might hold this over my head someday, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. First off, you are not being selfish or a jerk for deciding, you know what, I want to spend this Halloween getting paid for my work. That is not a selfish aspiration. That is you wanting to be properly financially compensated for your time. What you do is not easy, because clearly you're good at it, otherwise people wouldn't be asking you to do that for them. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk for wanting to set that boundary, for saying to your mom, listen, I want to do stuff on my own. I want to be able to make money this Halloween and not feel like I'm getting ripped off. Now, when it comes to having healthy boundaries, I think it just comes down to simply saying what you need. Like, we are all adults here. You're in your 30s and your mom is in her 50s. And I think trying to establish some kind of reasonable boundary when it comes to what you will and will not do is something that I think is completely normal. Everyone should be able to do that. And you know what? If your mom wants to hold it over your head just because you don't want to do something, and she wants to try and give you some kind of ultimatum of like, oh, help me with my Halloween decorations and my costume, or your stepdad's not going to help with your car. If she tries that, then just let her, because that kind of garbage is so childish, and there is no reason for you to have to put up with that for a second. So no, you are not the jerk here. You have every right to do whatever you want on Halloween, and if that means you can make some money in the process and actually give your time and effort to people who are going to appreciate it, then in my opinion, that is absolutely a good thing. My dad and stepmother, who treated me so horribly growing up, are now on the verge of being homeless, and despite calling me up, I'm refusing to help them out. Here's what happened. So my father and I have historically had a rocky relationship. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old, and he married the woman he cheated on my mother with. I was an only child, and she had 4 kids from a previous marriage. During my childhood years, I spent most of the allocated time dedicated to my father in the divorce with my paternal grandparents, and that was every 2 weeks and 42 days in the summer. They lived in a different state, and I cherished the time I had with them, and they would always go to bat for me. There was some tension caused early in my dad's new marriage due to my stepmom demanding that my grandparents go back to the store one Christmas and get equal amounts of gifts for all of her children, even taking some from me and gifting it to her youngest. I spent many times waiting on my mom's sofa, just waiting for my dad to pick me up, and he never would. I would later find out that he was on a family vacation with his new family. I could spend all day telling Cinderella stories, but I need to keep focus on this story. My grandparents picked up his slack. We spent summers learning how to make baskets, as well as gardening, camping, and other various different activities. Their home was like a second home to me. When I was 13 years old, I went to go live with my dad after some methodical brainwashing, and I then would rarely see my grandparents. My grandmother would call, and they would ignore it. It would hurt my heart to see it on caller ID, knowing they were just on the other line, but my dad and stepmother would not allow it. That is, unless I sat at a table with them on the call. Fast forward to the summer of my freshman year, and we went to visit my dad's side of the family. On the last night, my aunt and uncle who lived next door asked if I could stay the night with my cousins. My stepmother wanted her youngest daughter to be included, but they declined because my stepsister was a thief. A fight ensued in the front yard that night, resulting in physical altercations. My stepmother shoved my 74-year-old papa on the ground, and he had a hip replacement in the 90s and already had a stiff walk. I was utterly terrified and distraught. As the chaos ensued, I packed my belongings because they said that we were leaving. I vowed then that this would be the last straw, and I would never forgive them. We missed their 50th wedding anniversary because my stepmom was still upset over what his family did to her that night. The next spring, my papa had a stroke, and it was never the same. The man that helped raise me during his son's shortcomings didn't even remember my name. He then passed away in 2014. Later, I left the house when I was 18 to go to college, and that's where I met my husband. He has been my rock and helped when my dad throws fits in the last few years when he doesn't get his way. He has showed me nothing but unconditional love and support, and is the father to our child mine could never muster to be. I go no contact with my dad every couple of years because of his behavior. There is an old saying that time heals all wounds, but I don't believe that to always be true. I maintained a relationship with my paternal grandmother all the way up until her passing in December. She was a cheeky one who left notes for us to find after her passing. This woman never forgot a thing when she felt slighted. They always reflected in her will. So I inherited the house that had been deed to me since 2001. My dad knew they would give it to me, but I honestly think he thought he had a chance of fighting me for it. Since 2012, 2012, he and my stepmother have been living in an RV that is now starting to fall apart. He is retired military and has no savings. Right after the funeral, he stashed his belongings in closets. I discovered this after I changed the locks and added cameras, as I live out of state and wanted security for the home before I sell my home and move into my childhood home. I put his stuff and what was owed to him in storage, and my uncle gave him the keys. After learning this, he has been furious. My step-siblings keep reaching out, telling me that I'm heartless for keeping him out of his parents' house. He called crying, and I coldly told him that if they wanted him to have it, they would have left it specifically for him. I also told him he should have treated the parents better when they were alive. I have the deed in my hands, and there is nothing left for him to do about it. The estate is almost settled, and what land he does get will also have my name on the deed. I would rather share my childhood home with my daughter and all the whimsical things it had to offer, even if my dad ends up homeless. Good for you for putting your foot down. Your dad and stepmother sound absolutely awful, and the way they treated you growing up was so unacceptable. And you know what? If I was in your shoes, I would have done the same thing. I absolutely would have denied him having that house, and I would have moved in there, since obviously you have memories there that you were never even allowed to have at your father's house. So truly, it looks like karma definitely came around, because his awful actions finally are having consequences. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.